When your own father puts a price on your head, there's nowhere left to run. Lena Hart never imagined the greatest threat to her life would come from her own blood. One moment she was walking through a crowded street, the next, rough hands were dragging her toward a van while strangers looked away. The abduction failed, but the message was clear. Someone wanted her gone. And when the truth came out, when she saw her father's name on that threatening text, everything she thought she knew about family, loyalty, and survival shattered in an instant. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey travels. The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and broken promises. Lena sat in the corner booth, her fingers wrapped around a paper cup that had long since gone cold. Across from her, Michael Chen adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses for the third time in as many minutes, a nervous habit she'd learned to read like a warning sign. "You need to understand what you're getting into," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper, despite the clatter of the mid-morning crowd around them. "Adrian Voss doesn't do charity. If he's offering you protection, there's a reason." Lena's laugh came out bitter. "Protection from what? My credit card debt? My studio apartment in Queens?" "From your father." The words landed like a slap. Lena set down her cup with enough force that coffee sloshed over the rim, staining the stack of legal documents Michael had brought. Documents that apparently proved her life was worth more as collateral than as a living, breathing person. "My father wouldn't," she started, but Michael's expression stopped her. "Your father borrowed $3 million from people who don't accept late payments," Michael said flatly. "When he couldn't pay, he offered them something else. You." The rational part of Lena's brain wanted to argue, to defend the man who'd raised her, however poorly, after her mother died. But the other part, the part that had learned to recognize the specific tone in his voice when he'd been drinking, the part that remembered every forgotten birthday and broken promise, that part whispered that Michael might be telling the truth. "That's insane," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Michael pulled out his phone, swiped through several screens, then turned it toward her. "This was taken yesterday, outside your building." The photo showed a black sedan, windows tinted dark enough to be illegal in most states. Two men stood beside it, their attention fixed on the entrance to her apartment building. One of them held what looked like a tablet, its screen glowing in the afternoon light. "Who are they?" "Collectors." Michael's jaw tightened. "The kind who don't send reminders in the mail." Lena's hand started to shake. She pressed them flat against the table, willing them to be still, to not give away the fear that was crawling up her spine like ice water. "So what am I supposed to do? Hide? Run? I have a job, Michael. I have a life." "You had a life." Michael leaned forward, his voice urgent now. "Past tense. The moment your father put your name on that debt, everything changed. These people don't care about your marketing job or your rent or your plans for the weekend. They care about assets and returns, and right now, you're both." The absurdity of it hit her all at once. 28 years old, a college degree she was still paying off, a one-bedroom apartment she could barely afford, and somehow she'd become a negotiable asset in a world she didn't even know existed. "Adrian Voss," she said slowly, tasting the name. "Who is he?" "Someone who can help. If you're willing to accept his terms." "What terms?" Michael hesitated, and in that pause, Lena saw something that scared her more than the photo of strange men outside her building: uncertainty. "I don't know all of them," he admitted, "but I know this. Adrian doesn't lose. Ever. If he's interested in keeping you safe, you'll be safe, but nothing comes free in his world. So I'm trading one debt for another." "You're trading a death sentence for a chance." Michael's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. "We need to go. Now." "What? Why?" But Michael was already standing, gathering the documents with hands that trembled slightly. "They're here, outside. We have maybe 2 minutes before—" The coffee shop door chimed. 3 men walked in, moving with the kind of coordinated precision that spoke of military training or something worse. They weren't looking around, weren't scanning the room like normal customers. Their eyes went straight to Lena's booth. "Back exit," Michael hissed. "Move." Lena's body responded before her brain caught up. She was sliding out of the booth, following Michael toward the rear of the shop where a sign marked the restrooms. The barista, a college kid with purple hair and too many piercings, looked up from the espresso machine with lazy curiosity. Then everything happened at once. One of the men called out, "Miss Hart, we just want to talk." Michael grabbed her wrist and yanked her forward. The barista dropped the metal pitcher he'd been holding, and it hit the floor with a crash that made everyone in the shop turn. And Lena ran. The back hallway smelled like industrial cleaner and old grease. Michael slammed through the emergency exit, and a shrill alarm split the air. They burst into an alley strewn with garbage bags and broken pallets, the morning sun blinding after the dim interior. "This way!" Michael pulled her left toward the street. Behind them, the emergency door banged open again. Heavy footsteps echoed off brick walls. Lena's lungs burned. She wasn't a runner, had never been athletic, and her ankle boots, chosen for style over function, weren't designed for sprinting through Manhattan alleys. But fear was a remarkable motivator, and the sound of pursuit drove her forward. They burst onto the sidewalk, and Michael immediately stepped into traffic, one hand raised. A yellow cab swerved toward them with the suicidal confidence that only New York cabbies possessed. "Get in!" Michael wrenched open the door. Lena threw herself into the back seat. Michael dove in after her, slamming the door as one of their pursuers reached the sidewalk. "Drive," Michael told the cabbie, his voice hard. "Now. I'll pay triple." The driver, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, didn't ask questions. She hit the gas and the cab shot forward, cutting across 2 lanes of traffic and earning a symphony of angry horns. Lena twisted in her seat, looking through the rear window. The 3 men stood on the sidewalk, watching the cab disappear into traffic. One of them lifted a phone to his ear. "They're calling it in," she breathed. "I know." Michael was already on his own phone, fingers flying across the screen. "But we've got maybe 10 minutes before they coordinate. There's a building on 42nd, gray stone facade, gold revolving door. We're going there." "What's there?" "Safety." Michael looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, 3 years of working together at the same marketing firm, countless happy hours and office gossip sessions, she saw him as something other than her slightly awkward coworker. There was steel in his eyes now, a hardness that spoke of secrets she'd never suspected. Adrian's building. The cab wove through traffic with practiced aggression. Lena tried to process what had just happened. 20 minutes ago, she'd been sitting in a coffee shop, learning that her life was apparently worth $3 million to the wrong people. Now she was fleeing through Manhattan like a character in a movie, except this was terrifyingly, viscerally real. "Michael," she said quietly, "how do you know these people? Adrian Voss, the collectors, all of it?" He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice carried the weight of a confession. "I used to work for them. Different organization, same world. I got out 5 years ago, changed my name, built a normal life." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Or tried to. "But you don't really leave that world, Lena. It's always there, just under the surface. When I saw your name come across certain channels last week, I knew I had to help." "Why?" "Because nobody helped me when I needed it. And because you're a good person who got dealt a shit hand through no fault of your own." He met her eyes. "Your father made a choice. You shouldn't have to pay for it." The cab pulled to a stop in front of a building that looked like it had been transplanted from a different era. Gray stone, ornate molding, brass fixtures that gleamed in the sunlight. The revolving door was indeed gold, or at least gold-plated, and a doorman in a charcoal uniform stood beside it like a sentinel. "Come on," Michael said, handing the driver a handful of bills without counting them. They crossed the sidewalk, and the doorman's eyes tracked their approach. He was young, maybe 30, with the build of someone who spent serious time in a gym and the eyes of someone who'd learned to assess threats quickly. "Mr. Chen," the doorman said with a slight nod, and guessed. "She's expected," Michael replied. "Expected?" Lena wanted to ask, but Michael was already guiding her through the revolving door into a lobby that made her apartment building look like a storage unit. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, a massive chandelier that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Everything spoke of wealth, but old wealth, the kind that didn't need to advertise itself. 20th floor, Michael told her, heading toward a bank of elevators. The elevator car was lined with mirrors and dark wood. As it rose with silent efficiency, Lena caught sight of herself in the reflection, disheveled hair, eyes too wide, a coffee stain on her white blouse from when she'd knocked over her cup. She looked like what she was, someone who'd just been running for her life. The elevator chimed softly and the doors opened onto a hallway with exactly 2 doors, one on each end. Michael led her to the right. He knocked once, a specific pattern. 3 short, 1 long, 2 short. The door opened immediately. The man standing there was not what Lena expected. She'd built an image in her mind during the cab ride. Someone older, harder, probably in an expensive suit with slicked back hair and cold eyes. Instead, Adrian Voss looked to be in his mid-30s, dressed in dark jeans and a gray sweater. His brown hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. He was handsome in an understated way, with sharp features and eyes that were a startling shade of green, but it was the way he moved that caught her attention. Every gesture was economical, precise, like a chess player who'd already calculated the next 10 moves. "Mr. Chen," Adrian said, his voice carrying a faint accent she couldn't place. British, maybe, but softened by time. "And Miss Hart, come in." The apartment beyond was vast and surprisingly sparse. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the Manhattan skyline that probably cost more per month than her annual salary. But the furniture was minimal. A leather sofa, a few chairs, a desk near the windows covered with multiple computer monitors. "Thank you for seeing us on such short notice," Michael began, but Adrian raised a hand. "The notice was short because the situation is urgent." He turned those green eyes on Lena, and she felt suddenly exposed, like he could see through every defense she'd ever built. "You were followed to the coffee shop. The extraction attempt was clumsy, which suggests either desperation or a test. Either way, we don't have much time." "Extraction attempt?" Lena's voice came out sharper than she intended. "They were trying to kidnap me in broad daylight?" "Yes." Adrian walked to his desk and tapped one of the monitors. It flickered to life, showing security camera footage from various angles. Lena recognized the coffee shop, the alley, the street. "They've been tracking you for 3 days. This morning they decided to move." "How do you have this footage?" "Because I've been tracking them tracking you." Adrian's expression didn't change, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "Your father's debt situation came to my attention last week through certain channels. The creditors involved have a reputation for aggressive collection methods. When I saw they were targeting you, I took an interest." "Why?" The question burst out of her. "Why would you care? You don't know me. We've never met. So why am I standing in your apartment while you show me surveillance footage of my life?" For the first time, something that might have been a smile touched Adrian's lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Because your father made the mistake of borrowing from Viktor Kozlov," he said, "and Viktor made the mistake of thinking he could operate in my city without consequences." The name meant nothing to Lena, but Michael's sharp intake of breath told her it should. "Kozlov is here?" Michael's voice was tight. "In New York?" "He arrived 2 days ago, staying at the plaza under an assumed name, with enough security to start a small war." Adrian pulled up another screen, this one showing what looked like a hotel suite. Several men moved in and out of frame, all of them armed. "He's treating this collection personally, which suggests either the amount is significant or there's another motive." "3 million is significant," Lena said. "Not to Viktor Kozlov." Adrian turned to face her fully. "He moves that much money before breakfast. No, there's something else going on here. Your father didn't just borrow money. He promised something, or knows something, or has access to something that Viktor wants." "My father is a mid-level accountant who drinks too much and gambles more." Lena heard the bitterness in her own voice and didn't care. "He doesn't have access to anything except debt and disappointment. People are rarely what they seem." Adrian's tone was matter-of-fact. "But that's a puzzle for later. Right now, we need to establish your situation clearly. You've been targeted for abduction. The first attempt failed, but there will be others. You have 3 options." He held up one finger. "First, you can go to the police, file a report, request protection, hope the system works. I estimate your chances of survival at 30%, dropping to 15 once Victor's people determine you've gone official." A second finger. "Second, you can run. Change your name, leave the city, try to disappear. I give that 40% odds, maybe less. Victor has long reach and longer memory." A third finger. "Third, you can accept my protection. Let me handle Victor, neutralize the threat, and ensure your safety. Success rate, 95%. And the 5%? Lena asked. Represents variables I can't control, acts of fate if you believe in such things. But I don't, and neither should you. Lena looked at Michael, who gave her a small nod, then back at Adrian, who watched her with those unnervingly calm eyes. What's the catch? She asked. What do you want in return? Smart question. Adrian walked to the windows, hands clasped behind his back. I want information about your father, his business, his contacts, his habits, everything you know, everything you remember, no matter how insignificant it seems. That's it? Information? And your cooperation. There may come a time when I need you to do something, make a call, appear somewhere, provide verification. Nothing that will put you in direct danger, but actions that support the larger strategy. What larger strategy? Adrian turned, and now there was something sharp in his expression. Something that reminded Lena this man was not her friend, not her savior, but something far more complicated. The strategy of removing Viktor Kozlov from the board entirely, he said softly. Your father's debt is a symptom. Viktor is the disease, and I don't treat symptoms. The casual way he said it, removing someone from the board, sent a chill down Lena's spine. You're going to kill him, she said. It wasn't a question. I'm going to neutralize him. The specific methodology depends on circumstances. Adrian's tone remained conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. But yes, if necessary, Viktor Kozlov will cease to be a problem for anyone. The question is whether you can live with being part of that process. Could she? Lena didn't know. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem had been whether to splurge on takeout or stick with ramen for the third night in a row. Now she was being asked to choose between her own safety and what? Complicity in something she didn't fully understand? I need to think, she said. You have 60 seconds. Adrian checked his watch. After that, Viktor's people will have tracked the cab to this building and started making inquiries. The doorman will stall them, but not indefinitely. So decide, Miss Hart. Police, running, or me? Lena's mind raced. Police meant questions, reports, bureaucracy, and the nagging fear that Michael was right about her survival odds. Running meant abandoning everything, her job, her few friends, the life she'd built even if it wasn't much. And Adrian, she looked at him again, really looked. He stood perfectly still, waiting, no impatience in his posture. A man used to people making hard choices in his presence. If I agree, she said slowly, I want to know everything. No secrets, no surprises. You tell me what you're planning, what you need from me, and what the risks are. Full transparency. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Acceptable, he said. With one caveat. Some information is compartmentalized for security. I'll tell you everything you need to know, when you need to know it. But I won't endanger an operation by providing details prematurely. That's not transparency. It's survival. Adrian walked toward her and she forced herself not to step back. In my world, information is currency and weapon both. I'll give you what serves us both, but I won't compromise strategy for the sake of making you comfortable. Take it or leave it. Lena's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out reflexively and saw a text from an unknown number. We know you're at the Ashford building. Come down in the next 5 minutes and we can discuss this civilly. Stay inside and things get complicated. Her hands went numb. She showed the screen to Adrian. He read it without expression, then nodded. Time's up. Choose. And really, there was only one choice. The police couldn't protect her from people who tracked her through the city like prey. Running would only delay the inevitable. But this man, with his calm voice and cold calculations, he offered something else. I'm in, Lena said. Tell me what you need. Adrian smiled, and this time it touched his eyes. Though what she saw there wasn't warmth, it was satisfaction, like a player who'd just secured a crucial piece on the board. Michael, activate Protocol 7, Adrian said without looking away from Lena. Miss Hart, please sit down. We have a great deal to discuss, and very little time. Lena sat on the leather sofa while Michael moved to one of the computers and started typing rapidly. Adrian pulled over a chair and sat across from her, close enough that she could see the faint scar along his jawline, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. Your father, Adrian began. Richard Hart, age 56, employed by Mercer and Associates as a senior accountant. Divorced from your mother, Elizabeth, 15 years ago, 6 months before her death from cancer. Is this all correct? Yes. The clinical recitation of her family history stung, but she pushed the feeling down. He has a gambling problem, mostly online poker, some sports betting, has attended Gamblers Anonymous 3 times in the past 5 years, never lasting more than 2 months. Adrian's voice remained neutral. He owes money to at least 4 different bookmakers in addition to his debt to Kozlov. Total outstanding obligations approximately $3.8 million. How do you know all this? Because I made it my business to know. Adrian leaned forward slightly. Now tell me what I don't know. Tell me about his behavior in the last 6 months. Changes in routine, unusual phone calls, people he's mentioned, places he's been. Lena tried to think. She didn't see her father often, maybe once every few months for an awkward dinner that usually ended with him asking for money she didn't have. He called me 3 weeks ago, she said slowly. Asked if I'd ever thought about traveling. Said maybe we could take a trip together, somewhere tropical. It was weird because we've never done anything like that. What did you say? I said I couldn't afford it. He got quiet, then said maybe he'd found a way to help with my student loans. Pay them off completely. Lena's stomach twisted as she said it. I told him not to do anything stupid. Did he seem scared? No. Excited, maybe. Or manic. Like he had this big secret he was dying to tell but couldn't. Adrian nodded, his expression thoughtful. He was planning to sell you to clear his debt. The trip was probably a way to get you somewhere isolated, easier to transfer. When you refused, he had to find another approach. The casual brutality of it hit Lena like a physical blow. Her father, the man who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd stayed up with her when she had nightmares after her mother died, had planned to sell her like property. I'm going to be sick, she whispered. Adrian immediately stood and pointed toward a door. Bathroom's there. She barely made it before her stomach emptied. The coffee, the fear, the accumulated stress of the morning all came up in violent waves. When it was finally over, she rinsed her mouth and stared at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was pale, shaken, but her eyes were dry. No tears. Maybe she'd run out, or maybe some betrayals cut too deep for tears. When she emerged, Michael was still at the computer, but Adrian had moved to the window, phone pressed to his ear. Understood, he was saying. Keep them contained but comfortable. No direct engagement unless they force it. He ended the call and turned to Lena. Victor's people are in the lobby. 4 of them asking questions. The building security is handling it, but we need to move you before they decide to escalate. Move me where? Somewhere secure. I have a property in Westchester, fully equipped, completely isolated. You'll stay there until this is resolved. For how long? Days. Possibly weeks. Adrian's expression was serious. I won't lie to you. This isn't a quick process. Dealing with Victor requires precision. One wrong move and the situation becomes exponentially more dangerous. Lena thought about her apartment, her job, her life. All of it suddenly felt very far away, like she was looking at someone else's existence through glass. I need to call my office, she said. Tell them I'm taking emergency leave. No. Adrian's voice was sharp. No contact with anyone from your previous routine. Your phone, your email, all of it is potentially compromised. Victor's people are sophisticated. They can track communications, build patterns, use your contacts to apply pressure. So I just disappear? For now, yes. Michael will handle the necessary logistics. Medical leave from your job, rent payment, utilities. On paper, you'll be visiting a sick relative upstate, completely unremarkable. It was happening too fast. Lena felt like she was falling and couldn't find anything to grab onto. I need a minute, she said. Just 1 minute to process this. Adrian studied her, then nodded. You have 2. Use them. She walked to the windows and looked out at the city. Somewhere down there were people having normal days, going to work, meeting friends, worrying about normal things. She'd been one of them this morning. Now she was something else. A target. An asset. A piece in a game she didn't understand. Behind her, she heard Adrian speaking quietly to Michael. Full surveillance package, rotating shifts, and I want Carlos on primary. He's the best. What about her father? Michael asked. Track him, but don't engage. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he talks to. Richard Hart is going to lead us straight to Victor's real objective. Lena's 2 minutes were up. She turned around. I'm ready, she said. Adrian picked up a black duffel bag from beside his desk and handed it to her. Basic necessities, clothes in your size, toiletries, phone that's clean and encrypted. There's also $10,000 in cash, just in case. In case of what? In case something goes wrong and you need to run. The money will get you far enough to disappear if necessary. He met her eyes. I don't expect that to happen, but I plan for every contingency. The weight of the bag felt like the weight of her old life being replaced with something new and uncertain. Let's go, Adrian said. They took a service elevator down to the basement garage. The space was dimly lit, filled with expensive cars covered in dust sheets. Adrian led them to a black SUV that looked like it could survive a missile strike. Get in the back, he instructed Lena. Lay down across the seats and stay down until I tell you otherwise. She did as he said, feeling ridiculous and terrified in equal measure. The leather seat smelled new. Above her, she could see the ceiling of the vehicle, reinforced with what looked like additional plating. Adrian got in the driver's seat while Michael took the passenger side. The engine started with a deep rumble. The building security will create a diversion, Adrian said, his voice calm as he backed out of the parking space. Victor's people will be occupied for approximately 90 seconds. That's our window. The SUV moved through the garage and up a ramp. Lena heard the mechanical sound of a gate opening, then daylight flooded through the windows. Stay down, Adrian reminded her. The vehicle accelerated smoothly. Lena tried to track their movement by the sounds, traffic, horns, the rumble of what might have been a truck passing. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Clear, Michael said after what felt like an eternity. No pursuit. Confirm, Adrian replied. Confirming. Cameras show Victor's people still at the lobby entrance. They're arguing with security. Good. Maintain speed, normal traffic patterns. We'll take the scenic route. Lena risked sitting up slightly. Through the tinted windows, she could see they were heading north, away from Midtown. You can sit up properly now, Adrian said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. But stay below the window line. She adjusted herself into a more comfortable position, though her muscles were tight with tension. What happens when we get to Westchester? She asked. You'll have a full briefing. Meet the security team that will be protecting you. Learn the protocols. Adrian took a turn smoothly, and we'll begin the deeper conversation about your father and Viktor Kozlov. I still don't understand what Viktor really wants. You said $3 million isn't significant to him. It's not, which means the debt is a cover for something else. Your father has information or access or knows someone that Viktor needs. Our job is to figure out what that is before Viktor does something drastic. The city gradually gave way to suburbs, then to more rural landscape. Trees lined the highway, their spring leaves bright against a blue sky that seemed to mock the darkness of Lena's situation. Michael's phone buzzed. He read something on the screen and frowned. Problem? Adrian asked. Possibly. There's chatter on the networks about a meeting tonight. Viktor and someone called the accountant. Adrian's hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the steering wheel. Source? 3 different channels, all coded but following the same pattern. The accountant, Lena repeated. That's not my father, is it? That's too obvious. Your father is a senior accountant, Adrian said slowly. But the accountant is a code name that's been circulating in certain circles for about a year. Nobody knows who it is, man, woman, age, appearance, just that they have access to financial information that certain parties would kill for. Information like what? Offshore accounts, shell companies, money laundering networks. Adrian met her eyes in the mirror. The kind of information that could bring down governments or destroy criminal empires. And if Viktor is meeting with this person, it suggests he's preparing for something much larger than collecting a $3 million debt. The implications settled over Lena like a weight. This wasn't about her father's gambling problem. This was about something bigger, deeper, more dangerous. And somehow, she was right in the middle of it. My father isn't smart enough to be this accountant person, she said. But even as the words left her mouth, she wondered, how well did she really know Richard Hart? They'd been distant for years, their relationship reduced to obligatory holiday calls and uncomfortable dinners. What did she actually know about his life? We'll find out, Adrian said. They drove in silence for another 20 minutes before turning off the highway onto increasingly narrow roads. Trees pressed close on both sides, creating a tunnel of green. Finally, they turned onto a private drive marked only by a number on a discreet wooden post. The house that appeared through the trees was not what Lena expected. Instead of some fortified bunker, she saw a modern structure of glass and wood, built into the hillside with views of the surrounding forest, beautiful and serene, and completely isolated. Adrian parked in front and killed the engine. "Welcome to Safe House Bravo," he said. "You're home until this is over." They got out and Lena looked around. She could hear birds singing, the rustle of wind through leaves. It would have been peaceful if she didn't know she was here because men with guns were hunting her. The front door opened and a woman stepped out. She was in her 40s, athletic build, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a fitted black shirt, and there was a bulge at her hip that Lena recognized as a concealed weapon. "Miss Hart?" the woman said with a professional smile. "I'm Elena Martinez. I'll be heading your security detail." "Security detail," Lena repeated numbly. "3 people, rotating 8-hour shifts. We'll maintain a low profile but constant presence. House is fully equipped with cameras, sensors, and emergency protocols." Elena's tone was matter-of-fact, like she was describing hotel amenities. "You'll have freedom of movement within the property, but no unsupervised excursions beyond the perimeter." "So I'm a prisoner." "You're protected." Elena's expression softened slightly. "I know this is overwhelming, but Adrian's people are the best, and we're going to keep you safe." Adrian walked past them into the house. "Let's get settled. We have a lot to cover." The interior was as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings, an open floor plan, furniture that managed to be both comfortable and expensive. A wall of windows looked out onto a deck and the forest beyond. "Your room is upstairs," Elena said to Lena. "Take some time to freshen up. We'll reconvene in an hour for the full briefing." Lena climbed a floating staircase to the second floor and found a bedroom that was larger than her entire apartment. The bed was huge, covered in white linens. The attached bathroom had a shower with more settings than her car. The duffel bag Adrian had given her sat on a bench at the foot of the bed. She locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. Fear, anger, betrayal. It all crashed over her in waves, and this time the tears came, hot and bitter. Her father had tried to sell her. Men were hunting her. She was hiding in a stranger's house in the woods while people with guns stood watch. Nothing about this was normal or acceptable or survivable. But she was still alive, still breathing. And somewhere beneath the fear was something else, a spark of anger that grew hotter with every passing second. She hadn't chosen this, hadn't asked for any of it, but she was damned if she was going to be just a victim, a passive piece moved around someone else's board. If Adrian Voss wanted information about her father, she'd give it to him. Every detail, every memory, every scrap of knowledge that might help. And then she'd watch as he did whatever needed to be done to end this. Because Richard Hart had made his choice. Now Lena would make hers. She wiped her eyes, splashed cold water on her face, and changed into clean clothes from the duffel. When she looked in the mirror again, she saw someone different than the woman who'd sat in that coffee shop this morning. That woman had been soft, uncertain, trying to navigate a life that didn't quite fit. This woman, the one looking back at her now, was harder, sharper, ready. She went downstairs to find Adrian standing at the windows, phone in hand. Michael was setting up a laptop on the dining table, while Elena checked something on her own tablet. They all looked up when she entered. "I'm ready," Lena said. "Tell me everything." Adrian's slight smile held approval. "Excellent. Let's begin." He pulled up a chair and Lena sat across from him. Michael projected images onto a screen that descended from the ceiling. Surveillance photos, documents, maps. "Viktor Kozlov," Adrian began, and a photo appeared. A man in his 50s, silver hair, sharp suit, eyes that looked dead even through the camera lens. Russian by birth, international by operation, he runs what's ostensibly an import-export business, but his real revenue comes from money laundering, information brokerage, and strategic extortion. More images. Warehouse facilities, shipping manifests, a web of connections linking dozens of names and companies. He's careful, methodical, and absolutely ruthless. People who cross him tend to disappear in ways that send messages. But he's also practical. If there's a business solution to a problem, he'll take it over violence. It's cheaper and draws less attention. Then why the kidnapping attempt on me? Lena asked. Because you're leverage, and Victor understands leverage better than most. Adrian zoomed in on one section of the web of connections. He loaned your father money 6 months ago. The terms were standard for his operations: high interest, short timeline, severe penalties for default. Your father agreed, probably thinking he'd win big and pay it back. But he didn't. No. And when the deadline passed, Victor moved to collect. Except your father didn't have the money or any assets worth seizing, so he offered something else. Adrian's eyes met hers. You. The blunt confirmation made Lena's stomach turn, but she kept her expression neutral. Your father told Victor you worked in marketing, had no significant ties, no protection. Easy to acquire, easy to leverage. Victor could either ransom you back to your father for emotional compliance, sell you to parties interested in certain types of assets, or use you as collateral for other transactions. Human trafficking, Lena said flatly. Yes, though Victor would call it alternative asset liquidation. Adrian's disgust was subtle but present. But here's where it gets interesting. The timeline doesn't match Victor's usual patterns. He typically gives more notice before moving to this level of action. The kidnapping attempt today was rushed, almost desperate. Which means something changed, Michael added. Exactly. Adrian pulled up another image, a spreadsheet covered in numbers and codes. This appeared on certain dark web forums 3 days ago. Someone is selling information about Victor's network. Account numbers, shell companies, the works. Whoever the accountant is, they're offering to burn Victor's entire operation for the right price. Lena stared at the screen. And you think my father? I think your father either is the accountant, knows who the accountant is, or has access to their information. And Victor is scrambling to lock down every possible leak, which includes securing you as leverage against your father. The pieces started falling into place in Lena's mind, each one more terrible than the last. So Victor wants me to force my father to either stop selling information or hand it over. That would be my assessment. Adrian leaned back. The question is whether Richard Hart is actually sophisticated enough to be the accountant, or if he's somehow stumbled into possession of their data. My father can barely use email without help, Lena said. I can't imagine him operating on the dark web, selling intelligence to international criminals. People surprise you. Adrian's tone was neutral. And fear makes people capable of things they never imagined. Your father was desperate, in debt, probably drinking more. Desperate people either crumble or evolve. Maybe he evolved. Lena thought about the phone call 3 weeks ago. Her father's manic energy, his mysterious solution to her student loans. Had he already been planning this? Already in possession of information he planned to sell? What happens if Victor gets his hands on this accountant information? She asked. If he gets it first, he can protect his assets, possibly trace and eliminate whoever is selling it. His empire remains intact. Adrian's expression was grim. If someone else gets it, a rival organization, law enforcement, hostile government, Victor loses everything. Billions of dollars, decades of carefully constructed infrastructure, all gone. And if that happens, he has nothing to lose, Lena said slowly, understanding dawning, which makes him infinitely more dangerous. Now you're thinking strategically. Adrian looked almost pleased. Victor with an empire to protect will follow rules, maintain appearances, operate within certain boundaries. Victor with nothing left becomes a wounded animal, and those are the most dangerous kind. So what do? We find out what your father knows, who the accountant is, and what they're planning. Then we decide how to use that information to neutralize Victor permanently. Adrian stood and walked to the window. But we need to move carefully. Victor has resources, connections, and a very long reach. One mistake, and this whole situation collapses. Elena spoke up from where she'd been quietly monitoring her tablet. We just got a hit on Richard Hart's credit card. He checked into a motel in Jersey, the Starlight off Route 17, used his real name. Everyone turned to look at her. That's either very stupid or a trap, Michael said. Or he wants to be found, Lena said quietly. Maybe he's scared and looking for help. Adrian considered this, his expression unreadable. Or he's being used as bait to draw us out. Victor is many things, but subtle isn't always one of them. If he's got Richard and is using him to lure us, we need to know. So we go, Lena said. Tonight, we find him and get answers. We don't go anywhere. Adrian's voice was firm. You stay here, where it's secure. I'll take a team and extract your father. If he has information, we'll get it. If it's a trap, we'll handle it. But you are not going anywhere near this situation. Lena stood, anger flaring. He's my father. If there's any chance he's actually in trouble, I deserve to be there. You deserve to stay alive. Adrian's tone didn't rise, but there was steel underneath. I made you a promise. To keep you safe. I can't do that if you're walking into potential crossfire. I didn't agree to be wrapped in cotton and hidden away while you make all the decisions. Then you misunderstood our arrangement. Adrian stepped closer, and Lena had to force herself not to back down. You agreed to accept my protection. Part of that protection is keeping you away from situations where you could be killed or captured. This is non-negotiable. They stared at each other, the tension in the room thick enough to cut. Michael looked uncomfortable while Elena watched with professional detachment. Finally, Lena broke the silence. Fine, you go. But I want communication, constant updates, everything that happens. No keeping me in the dark because you think I can't handle it. Adrian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Acceptable. You'll have a direct line, and I'll provide updates every 30 minutes or as situations develop. Agreed? Agreed. The tension broke but didn't fully dissipate. Adrian checked his watch. It's 1500 hours now. I want full reconnaissance before we move. Michael, I need everything on that motel. Layout, exits, surveillance coverage, nearby buildings. Elena, coordinate with Carlos and bring the B team for backup. I want this operation clean and quick. Everyone moved into action with practiced efficiency. Lena stood in the middle of it all, feeling useless and frustrated. This was her life they were planning around. Her father they were discussing like a tactical objective. Adrian must have seen something in her expression because he paused on his way past. I know this is difficult, he said quietly. Giving up control when everything feels chaotic. But trust me, I'm very good at what I do, and what I do is solve problems like Viktor Kozlov. By removing them from the board, Lena said, remembering his earlier words, if necessary. But there are many ways to remove a piece from play. Not all of them involve violence. His green eyes were steady. Your father made terrible choices that put you in danger, but he's still your father, and I won't forget that. The unexpected compassion caught Lena off guard. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Adrian squeezed her shoulder once, brief contact, human and warm, then moved on to coordinate with his team. Lena spent the next 3 hours pacing the length of the safe house like a caged animal. The beautiful view, the comfortable furniture, the subtle luxury of everything around her. None of it mattered when she was trapped waiting for news about whether her father was alive, dead, or bait in a trap that could get Adrian killed. Elena sat at the dining table with her laptop, monitoring multiple camera feeds and communication channels. She tried to engage Lena in conversation twice, but Lena's responses had been monosyllabic enough that the security chief had given up and let her pace in silence. The sun was setting when Adrian's voice crackled through the speaker system. We're in position, he said, his voice calm and professional. Motel is exactly as the reconnaissance indicated. 2 stories, 20 units, approximately 40% occupancy. Richard Hart checked into room 114, ground floor, corner unit. Lights are on, but we haven't confirmed visual on the target. Lena moved closer to the speaker. Is anyone watching the room? Victor's people? Not obviously, but there's a sedan in the parking lot that doesn't match the typical guest profile. 2 occupants, both male, both watching the motel entrance with more attention than tourists usually give a cheap motel in Jersey. So it is a trap. Possibly. Or Victor's people are waiting to see who shows up. Adrian's voice remained steady. Either way, we're going in. Michael is running electronic countermeasures to blur any surveillance they might have. Carlos and I will enter through the back window while Elena's team creates a diversion at the front office. Standard extraction protocol. What kind of diversion? The kind that makes men in sedans very interested in something that isn't room 114. There was a pause, then Adrian's voice came back. Diversion initiating in 30 seconds. going silent until extraction is complete. The speaker went quiet. Lena looked at Elena, who was watching her screen with intense focus. What diversion? Probably a fire alarm or some kind of disturbance in the lobby. Adrian's team is creative. They'll make it convincing enough to pull attention without causing real panic. Elena's fingers moved across her keyboard. I'm monitoring local emergency channels in case things go sideways, and we need to know if police are responding. The minutes crawled past. Lena found herself counting seconds, trying to imagine what was happening at that motel. Adrian slipping through a back window, her father's face when he realized someone had found him, the men in the sedan deciding whether to investigate the diversion or hold position. 10 minutes passed, then 15. This is taking too long, Lena said. Standard extraction can take 20 to 30 minutes if they're being careful. Elena's tone was reassuring, but her eyes never left the screen. Adrian won't rush this. Then the speaker crackled back to life, and Adrian's voice came through, tight with urgency. We've got him, but there's a problem. He's been drugged. Something strong enough to keep him compliant but conscious. We're loading him into the vehicle now. Carlos spotted movement from the sedan, 2 men approaching on foot. We need to move. Copy that, Elena said into her headset. B team, initiate secondary diversion and prepare for immediate exfil. Lena's heart hammered. What does drugged mean? Is he hurt? Unknown, Adrian replied, and she could hear the sound of a car door slamming, an engine starting. He's responsive but confused, keeps asking for someone named Sarah. Michael's trying to stabilize him for transport. Sarah had been Lena's mother's name. A chill ran down her spine. We're mobile, Adrian continued. Sedan is pursuing but keeping distance. They're not trying to stop us, just tracking. That's not standard behavior. They want to see where you go, Elena said. Agreed, which means we can't come straight back to the safe house. Adrian's voice was clipped, analytical even under pressure. Initiating evasion route Echo. ETA to secondary location is 45 minutes. We'll update when secure. The connection cut out again. Lena stared at the speaker, her mind racing. Her father had been drugged and left in that motel room like bait. Victor's people had been watching, waiting. And now they were following Adrian's vehicle, trying to trace the route back to wherever they were keeping Lena. They know he came for my father, she said quietly. Victor knows someone is protecting me, and now he's trying to find out who and where. Elena nodded grimly. Which is why Adrian's taking your father to a different location. The secondary site is clean, not connected to any of his other operations. Even if they manage to follow, which they won't because Adrian's the best evasion driver I've ever seen, they'll hit a dead end. And then what? Then we wait for your father to clear the drugs from his system and tell us what the hell is really going on. Elena stood and walked to the kitchen, pulling out a bottle of water. You should eat something. It's going to be a long night. I can't eat. Then at least drink water. Dehydration won't help anyone. Elena set the bottle on the counter between them. I know this is terrifying, but Adrian has extracted people from worse situations than a Jersey motel. Your father will be here in a few hours, and we'll get answers. Lena picked up the water bottle and drank mechanically. The liquid was cold, almost shocking against her dry throat. She hadn't realized how thirsty she was. The next hour passed in excruciating slowness. Elena fielded calls from the B team, coordinated with Michael about routes and security protocols, and monitored what seemed like a dozen different information streams simultaneously. Lena tried to help, but quickly realized she'd just be in the way, so she sat on the couch and watched the darkness gather outside the windows. Finally, Adrian's voice came through again. Secondary location secure. Your father is stable, still groggy, but coming around. No sign of pursuit. We're clean. He sounded tired for the first time since Lena had met him. Michael's running a full medical check. I'll call back in 30 with an update. Another waiting period. Lena thought she might lose her mind. When the speaker activated again, it wasn't Adrian but Michael's voice. Lena, your father's asking for you. Her breath caught. Is he okay? Physically, yes. Whatever they gave him is wearing off. But mentally, Michael paused. He's scared, really scared. And he keeps saying he needs to warn you about something. Put him on. There was rustling. Then her father's voice came through the speaker, rough and slurred, but unmistakably his. Lena? Baby, is that really you? Tears sprang to Lena's eyes at the nickname he hadn't used since she was a child. "Yeah, Dad, it's me. I'm safe. Thank Christ." The relief in his voice was palpable. "I was so afraid they'd already gotten to you. I tried to warn you, tried to call, but they took my phone and—" He broke off, coughing. "Don't talk too much," Michael's voice said in the background. "You need to rest." "No, she needs to know." Richard Hart's voice gained strength, fueled by fear and urgency. "Lena, listen to me. Viktor Kozlov, he's not just after the money. He thinks I have information about something called the ledger. And he's right. I do. But if he gets it, people are going to die. A lot of people." "The ledger?" Lena looked at Elena, who was already typing rapidly on her laptop. "It's a compiled record," her father continued. "Every dirty transaction, every laundered dollar, every political payoff for the last 15 years. I've been compiling it for someone who promised they'd use it to bring these bastards down. But then Victor found out, and everything went to hell." Adrian's voice cut in. "Richard, who hired you to compile this ledger?" "I don't know their real name. We only communicated through encrypted channels. They called themselves the Architect. Said they were building a case that would collapse the entire criminal financial network in the Northeastern Corridor." "And you believed them?" Adrian's tone was skeptical. "I had to believe in something." Richard's voice cracked. "I was drowning in debt, drinking myself to death, and this person offered me a way out. Money, protection, a chance to do something that mattered for once in my pathetic life. So yes, I believed them." Lena closed her eyes. This was so perfectly her father. Desperate, gullible, jumping at any solution that promised to fix everything without him having to face the consequences of his own choices. "Where is the ledger now?" Adrian asked. "That's the problem." Richard's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I hid it somewhere safe, somewhere Victor would never think to look. But if something happens to me, it's gone forever." The Architect's whole operation, all that evidence, just gone. "Dad, where did you hide it?" Lena demanded. There was a long pause, then her father said quietly, "I can't tell you over the phone. Too risky. I need to show you in person." "That's not possible right now," Adrian said firmly. "You're in no condition to travel, and Lena is staying exactly where she is, secured and protected." "Then we're all screwed." Richard's laugh was bitter. "Because Victor knows I have the ledger, and he knows I hid it. He's been systematically destroying every place I've ever been, every property I've ever owned, looking for it. He'll find it eventually. He has the resources and the motivation, and when he does, he'll burn it and everyone connected to it." "Including Lena," Michael said quietly. "Especially Lena." Richard's voice broke. "I put her name on the insurance policy. The Architect insisted, said it would provide extra security, make sure nothing happened to me because someone else could access the information. I thought it was smart at the time. Now I realize I just painted a target on my daughter's back." Lena felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "You what?" "I'm so sorry, baby. I thought I was protecting us both. The Architect said if anything happened to me, you'd be able to retrieve the ledger and complete the mission. They'd pay you everything they promised me. $500,000. Enough to clear all my debts and set you up for life." "I don't want your blood money." Lena's voice rose. "I want to not be hunted by international criminals because of your stupid, selfish decisions." I know, and I'm sorry." Richard was crying now. She could hear it. "I've made so many mistakes, Lena. Your whole life, I've let you down. But I can fix this. If we can get the ledger to the Architect before Victor finds it, they'll expose everything. Victor's empire will collapse, and he won't have any reason to come after you." Adrian's voice was cold. "Or the Architect will disappear with the evidence and you'll both still be targets because Victor will assume you kept copies. They wouldn't— You don't know what they would or wouldn't do because you have no idea who they actually are." Adrian cut him off. "This whole operation smells wrong. Anonymous handler, encrypted communications, a promise of money and redemption. Richard, you didn't stumble into some righteous crusade. You got recruited by someone running a very sophisticated intelligence operation, and you're a loose end they're probably planning to tie up." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Elena spoke up, her eyes still on her screen. "I'm running searches on the Architect through our intelligence channels. There are rumors about someone operating in that capacity, but nothing concrete. Whoever they are, they're very good at staying hidden." Which suggests resources and training, Adrian said. Government agency possibly, or a well-funded private operation. Either way, they're using you, Richard, and they've endangered your daughter in the process. So what do we do? Lena asked. Her anger had burned itself out, leaving behind exhaustion and fear. We get the ledger, Adrian said simply. Secure it, analyze it, and figure out who the architect really is and what they're planning. Then we decide how to use it to neutralize Victor and protect you both. I told you, I can't tell you where it is over the phone, Richard protested. Then we'll have a conversation in person, in a secure location, with proper countermeasures in place. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. Michael, what's his condition? Stable enough to move in another hour or two once the drugs fully clear his system. Good. Bring him here. Elena, I want the perimeter security doubled and all approaches monitored. If Victor's people somehow tracked us, I want to know the moment they get within a mile of this location. Copy that, Elena said, already making calls. Adrian's voice softened slightly. Lena, I know this is a lot to process. Your father made terrible choices that have put you in danger. But he's also the key to ending this situation. Try to get some rest before he arrives. We'll need you sharp for what comes next. The speaker went silent. Lena sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Her father, the man who'd forgotten her 16th birthday, who'd missed her college graduation because he was on a gambling binge, who'd been more ghost than parent for most of her adult life, had somehow gotten involved with international criminals and shadow intelligence operations, and he dragged her into it without even telling her. He loves you, you know, Elena said quietly. Lena looked up sharply. What? Your father. I heard it in his voice when he was talking to you. The fear, the guilt. But underneath all that, love. Elena sat down across from her. Doesn't excuse what he did. Doesn't make it right. But people do incredibly stupid things when they're desperate and trying to protect someone they care about. He wasn't protecting me. He was saving himself and hoping I'd somehow benefit from the fallout. Maybe. Elena's expression was thoughtful. Or maybe he actually believed this architect person when they said you'd be safe. People want to believe that their mistakes can lead to something good, especially when they've made so many of them. Lena didn't want to feel sympathy for her father, didn't want to understand or forgive, but Elena's words burrowed into her mind, unwelcome and persistent. You have a family, Lena asked. 2 younger brothers. One's a teacher in Boston, the other runs a restaurant in Miami. I don't see them often. This job doesn't leave much room for family gatherings, but I make sure they're protected. Money in accounts they don't know about. Security systems they think are standard home installations, but are actually military grade. Elena smiled slightly. They think I work in private security for rich people, which is true, just not the whole truth. Do they know how dangerous your work is? No, and I'd like to keep it that way. Elena's smile faded. My point is, we all make choices about how to protect the people we love. Sometimes those choices are good ones. Sometimes they're disasters wrapped in good intentions. Your father chose disaster, but the intention was there. Before Lena could respond, her phone buzzed. The encrypted device Adrian had given her. She looked at the screen and saw a message from an unknown number. We know where you are. We know your father is coming to you. Give us the ledger and everyone walks away. Refuse and we start with your father, then work our way to you. You have until midnight to decide. V. Her hands went cold. Elena? The security chief was beside her instantly, reading the message over her shoulder. Her expression darkened. How did they get this number? Lena whispered. They shouldn't have. This phone is completely clean. New device, encrypted network. Elena was already on her headset. Adrian, we have a problem. Victor just sent a message to Lena's secure phone. He knows she's at this location and knows Richard is coming here. Adrian's response was immediate and sharp. That's impossible, unless... Check Richard, now. Through the speaker, Lena heard Michael's voice, urgent. Richard, do you have anything on you? Any devices, chips, anything that could be transmitting? No, I don't. Wait. Richard's voice went small. My watch. The architect gave me a watch, said it was a secure communication device in case I needed to reach them in an emergency. I've been wearing it for months. Take it off. Michael, check it. There was rustling. Then Michael's voice came back, tight with anger. It's not a communication device. It's a tracker, high-end, probably custom-made. And it's been transmitting this whole time. Adrian's curse was creative and multilingual. They've known every move we've made, every location, every route. Victor hasn't been following us. He's been watching us on a map. I didn't know, Richard said desperately. The architect said it was for emergencies. I swear I didn't know. It doesn't matter what you knew. Adrian's voice was ice. What matters is that our position is compromised, and we have maybe 20 minutes before Victor's people arrive in force. Elena, initiate full evacuation protocol. Get Lena to the backup location now. Elena was already moving, grabbing equipment and weapons from concealed compartments around the room. Copy. Backup location is 40 minutes away. You don't have 40 minutes, Adrian cut her off. Victor's message to Lena was a tactical declaration. He's giving us until midnight to surrender, which means he's confident he can take this location before then. He's probably already mobilizing his full team. Then we fight, Elena said grimly. No, you run. Adrian's tone was final. Your job is protecting Lena, not engaging in a firefight you can't win. Take the emergency vehicle and head for the western perimeter exit. We'll intercept Victor's people from this end, slow them down long enough for you to get clear. Adrian, Elena started, that's an order. Protect the asset. Everything else is secondary. The asset. Lena realized with cold clarity. That's what she was in this equation. Not a person, not someone's daughter, but an asset to be protected because Victor wanted her and the ledger she could apparently access. Let's move, Elena said, grabbing Lena's arm. Wait, my father is with Adrian and will be protected. But right now I need you to trust me. And run. They rushed through the house to what looked like a utility closet. Elena pressed a hidden switch and the back wall slid open, revealing a narrow stairway leading down. Emergency tunnel, Elena explained, pulling Lena forward. Leads to a garage a quarter-mile from the main house. Vehicle is ready to go, fully supplied. The tunnel was concrete and lit by dim emergency lights. Their footsteps echoed as they ran. Lena's mind was spinning, trying to process everything happening at once. Victor's people are coming here, she said. Adrian and Michael and my father. They're going to be outnumbered. Adrian doesn't lose firefights, Elena said, her breathing steady despite their pace. And he's got the advantage of choosing the terrain. The house is set up with defensive positions, controlled access points, and enough firepower to hold off a small army. That's supposed to be reassuring? It's supposed to be the truth. Elena stopped at a heavy steel door and punched in a code. It opened with a hiss of hydraulics. Your father got you into this mess. Adrian is getting you out. Your job is to stay alive and let us do ours. They emerged into a garage that held a single vehicle, another black SUV, this one even more heavily armored than the one they'd driven from Manhattan. Elena practically threw Lena into the passenger seat before climbing behind the wheel. The engine roared to life. Elena hit a button on the dashboard, and the garage door ahead of them rolled up, revealing a dirt road disappearing into the forest. Seatbelt, Elena ordered. Lena barely got it fastened before Elena gunned the engine and they shot forward into the darkness. The road was rough, all hairpin turns and sudden drops. Elena drove like a professional racer, the vehicle responding to her commands with precision. Behind them, the safe house disappeared from view. Where are we going? Lena asked. Backup location? Another property, this one under a shell company with no connection to Adrian's known assets. It's more isolated, harder to reach, easier to defend. Elena's eyes never left the road. We hole up there and wait for the all clear. And if the all clear never comes? Then we execute contingency plans and get you out of the country. Elena glanced at her. Adrian has protocols for every scenario. Trust the process. Lena's phone buzzed again. Another message from Victor. Running won't help. Give me the ledger or watch everyone you care about die. Starting with Daddy Dearest. Tick-tock, Lena. Her stomach twisted. He's going to kill my father. Not if Adrian kills him first. Elena's voice was flat. And before you ask, yes, Adrian is fully prepared to do that. Viktor Kozlov is a dead man walking. He just doesn't know it yet. The casual way Elena said it should have been shocking. Instead, Lena felt a dark satisfaction. Let Adrian kill Viktor. Let him remove the threat permanently. She was tired of being afraid, tired of running, tired of being leverage in someone else's game. They drove in silence for another 15 minutes before Elena's headset crackled. Elena, this is Carlos. We've got multiple hostiles approaching the safe house. At least 8 vehicles, heavily armed. Adrian is implementing defensive measures, but you need to be aware. They're also sending a pursuit team in your direction. How do they know our route? Elena demanded. Unknown. Possibly they've been monitoring the area long enough to map all access roads. Either way, you've got company coming up behind you. ETA approximately 5 minutes. Copy that. Switching to evasive route, Charlie. Elena yanked the wheel hard, and the SUV veered onto an even narrower road, barely visible in the darkness. Lena twisted in her seat, looking through the rear window. In the distance, she could see headlights, multiple sets closing fast. They're gaining, she said. Not for long. Elena's jaw was set with determination. The road became treacherous, winding through dense forest with drops on either side that Lena didn't want to think about. Elena navigated it at speeds that should have been impossible, the SUV's suspension absorbing impacts that would have destroyed a normal vehicle. Behind them, the pursuing vehicles struggled to keep pace. One took a turn too fast, and Lena saw it slide toward the edge, nearly going over before recovering. Their drivers aren't as good, Elena said with satisfaction, but they're determined. This is going to get rough. As if to punctuate her words, something pinged off the rear window. Then again, and again. They're shooting at us, Lena said, her voice higher than she intended. The glass is bulletproof. They'd need sustained fire with armor-piercing rounds to penetrate. Elena's voice remained calm. But it does mean they're getting desperate, which makes them dangerous. The road suddenly opened up into a clearing with what looked like an old logging operation. Rusted equipment, abandoned buildings, stacks of rotting timber. Elena didn't slow down, steering the SUV between obstacles with hair's-breadth precision. One of the pursuing vehicles wasn't as lucky. It clipped a pile of timber and spun out, crashing into an old crane with a sound of crumpling metal. 3 vehicles left, Elena reported. Carlos, what's the status at the safe house? Engaged. Hostiles are trying to breach, but we've got them pinned down. Adrian says to keep running, don't slow down for anything. Copy. They burst out of the clearing and back onto another narrow forest road. The remaining pursuit vehicles were right behind them now, close enough that Lena could see figures leaning out the windows with weapons. Hold on, Elena said. She slammed on the brakes and yanked the wheel. The SUV executed a perfect bootleg turn, ending up facing the oncoming vehicles. Then Elena hit the gas again, driving straight at them. It was the most terrifying game of chicken Lena had ever witnessed. 3 vehicles barreling toward them, weapons firing, and Elena drove forward without flinching. At the last possible second, the lead pursuit vehicle swerved to avoid collision. It went off the road and into the forest, smashing through undergrowth and small trees before disappearing from sight. The second vehicle tried to brake but couldn't stop in time. It slammed into the third vehicle, and both of them went spinning across the road in a screech of metal and burning rubber. Elena drove past them without slowing, executing another turn that put them back on their original heading. All pursuit vehicles neutralized, she said into her headset, proceeding to backup location. Lena realized she'd been holding her breath. She let it out in a shaky gasp. You okay? Elena asked, glancing at her. I think I'm going to throw up. There's a bag in the glove compartment if you need it, but try to hold on. We're almost there. Almost there turned out to be another 20 minutes of driving through increasingly remote forest. Finally, they turned onto a road so overgrown it was barely visible and emerged at a cabin that looked like it had been abandoned for decades. This is the backup location? Lena asked dubiously. Looks can be deceiving. Elena parked behind the cabin and killed the engine. Come on. The cabin's front door was weathered and covered in peeling paint. But when Elena pressed her thumb to what looked like a rusty doorknob, Lena heard the distinct sound of electronic locks disengaging. Inside, the cabin was nothing like the exterior suggested. The walls were reinforced steel disguised as wood. The windows were bulletproof glass with blast shutters. And the interior was outfitted with the same kind of high-tech security equipment that had filled the safe house. Welcome to backup location Gamma, Elena said, moving through the space with practiced efficiency. Food, water, ammunition, medical supplies, everything we need to hold out for a week if necessary. Lena's legs suddenly felt weak. She sat down heavily on a couch that was far more comfortable than it had any right to be. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we wait. Elena was setting up monitoring equipment. Adrian and Carlos will handle the situation at the safe house. Once it's secure and Victor's people are dealt with, we'll get the all clear and move to the next phase. Which is? Getting your father to tell us where the ledger is hidden, retrieving it, and figuring out how to use it to end this once and for all. Elena looked at her seriously. Your father created this situation, Lena, but Adrian is going to finish it. One way or another, Victor Kozlov will not be a threat after tonight. Lena wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that Adrian was as capable as everyone seemed to think, that this nightmare would end and she could somehow return to normal life. But deep down, she knew the truth. There was no going back to normal. The moment those men had tried to grab her in the coffee shop, the moment she'd learned her father had sold her out, the moment she'd accepted Adrian's protection, all of it had changed her fundamentally. The woman who'd worried about her marketing job and her rent was gone. In her place was someone harder, colder, someone who could watch pursuit vehicles crash and feel satisfaction instead of horror. Her phone buzzed one more time. Another message from Victor. You can run, but you can't hide forever. The ledger belongs to me. Everything belongs to me, including you, V. Lena read the message, and instead of fear, she felt something else rising inside her. Anger. Pure, white-hot anger at this man who thought he could threaten her, hunt her, claim ownership of her life like she was property to be bought and sold. She typed a response before she could think better of it. I don't belong to anyone. Not you, not my father, not anyone. Come find me if you're brave enough. Let's see how that works out for you. L. She hit send before she could reconsider. Elena looked over sharply. I just told Victor Kozlov to come and get me, Lena said, a strange calm settling over her. Is that going to be a problem? Elena stared at her for a long moment. Then a slow smile spread across her face. Adrian is going to love you, she said. In the distance, barely audible through the reinforced walls, came the sound of gunfire. The battle at the safe house had begun, and somewhere in that chaos was her father, the man who'd caused all of this, the man she should hate but couldn't quite manage to. Whatever happened next, whatever the ledger contained, whatever Victor had planned, Lena was done being a victim, done running, done hiding, done letting other people control her fate. If this was war, then she'd learn to be a soldier, and she'd start by making sure Victor Kozlov regretted the day he'd ever learned her name. The gunfire lasted exactly 17 minutes. Lena knew because she counted every second, watching the digital clock on Elena's monitor while the sounds of combat echoed through the forest like distant thunder. Then abruptly, silence fell, thick and complete, broken only by the whisper of wind through the trees. Elena's hand hovered over her weapon, eyes fixed on her communications display. The silence stretched until Lena thought she might scream just to break it. Then the radio crackled. Backup location Gamma, this is Adrian, hostiles neutralized. Safe house secure. Casualties on our side 0. On theirs, not 0. Elena's shoulders relaxed fractionally. Status on the primary asset? Richard Hart is uninjured and currently explaining why he thought wearing a tracking device was a good idea. Adrian's voice carried an edge that made Lena wince. We're sanitizing the scene and we'll move to your location within the hour. Sit tight. Copy that, Elena said, then added, Adrian, there's something you should know. Lena sent Victor a message. A pause that felt like judgment itself. What kind of message? Adrian's tone was dangerously calm. Elena looked at Lena, who cleared her throat and spoke directly to the radio. I told him to come find me if he was brave enough, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. I'm tired of being afraid. The silence that followed was so long that Lena wondered if the connection had dropped. Then Adrian spoke, and there was something new in his voice. Not anger, but a kind of dark amusement. Bold, he said. Strategically questionable, but bold. We'll discuss it when I arrive. In the meantime, Elena, assume elevated threat level. Victor now knows Lena isn't cowering in a corner, which changes his tactical approach. How? Lena asked. Because men like Victor Kozlov respect strength, even when it comes from unexpected sources. You just told him you're not easy prey. That makes you more interesting, which means he'll either escalate dramatically or Adrian trailed off. Or what? Or he'll want to meet you himself, face to face, to assess whether you're actually a threat or just plain brave. Adrian's voice sharpened. Either way, we use it. Your father has information we need, and Victor has made his position clear. It's time to stop reacting and start controlling the situation. What does that mean? Elena asked. It means we're done running. When I get there, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation, one that ends with Viktor Kozlov removed from the board permanently. The connection clicked off. Elena looked at Lena with an expression somewhere between respect and concern. You just changed the entire dynamic of this situation, she said quietly. I hope you understand that. I understand I'm tired of being a chess piece, Lena replied. If Victor wants to play games, let's play. But this time, I want a seat at the table. Adrian will give you one. Whether you're ready for what comes with it is another question. Elena moved to the window, checking the perimeter through the reinforced glass. People think getting power means getting safety. Usually it means getting more danger, just different kinds. Can't be more dangerous than what I'm already in. You'd be surprised. Elena's voice carried the weight of experience. Victor's people just attacked a fortified safe house with multiple armed defenders. They lost, badly. That kind of defeat doesn't make men like Victor back down. It makes them vicious. Whatever comes next will be worse than anything you've seen so far. Lena thought about the car chase, the gunfire, the casual way everyone talked about killing and being killed. If that wasn't the worst of it, she wasn't sure she wanted to know what was. But wanting and needing were different things. She needed to know, needed to understand the world her father had dragged her into, the world Adrian navigated like a master, the world that would kill her if she didn't learn its rules fast enough. Then teach me, she said to Elena. You've got an hour before Adrian gets here. Teach me something useful. Elena studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, first lesson. Everything is a weapon if you know how to use it. Show me what you've got on you right now. Lena emptied her pockets. Phone, wallet, a hair tie, a pen she'd picked up at some point without remembering. Elena picked up the pen. Plastic body, metal clip, decent weight. In an emergency, you go for the eyes or the throat. Jab and twist. Don't stab straight or it might get stuck. She demonstrated the motion. You'll only get one surprise attack, so make it count. That's horrifying. That's survival. Elena set the pen down and pointed to the hair tie. Can be used as a tourniquet in a pinch or wrapped around your fingers for extra grip when throwing a punch. Small advantages matter in a fight. They spent the next 40 minutes going through basic self-defense techniques. Elena was a patient but demanding teacher, correcting Lena's stance and grip with the same precision she'd used driving through those mountain roads at lethal speeds. Your instinct is to pull away from threats, Elena explained after Lena flinched for the third time. You need to override that. In close combat, sometimes moving toward the attack gives you better leverage and control. That goes against every survival instinct I have. Which is why people who rely on instinct usually die when things get serious. Elena demonstrated a disarm technique that looked simple, but required Lena to step directly into what would be the path of a knife. Trust the training, not the fear. By the time headlights appeared through the trees, Lena's arms ached and her head was spinning with information. But she could execute 3 different disarm techniques, knew how to use everyday objects as improvised weapons, and understood the basic principles of situational awareness. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had an hour ago. Adrian's SUV pulled up outside, followed by a second vehicle Lena didn't recognize. Car doors opened and closed. Voices murmured in the darkness. Then the cabin door opened and Adrian walked in, followed by Michael and Carlos, a man Lena hadn't met yet but recognized from Elena's descriptions. Carlos was built like a linebacker, with the kind of calm readiness that suggested military background. Behind them, looking smaller and frailer than Lena remembered, came her father. Richard Hart had aged a decade since she'd last seen him 3 months ago. His hair was grayer, his face more lined, his eyes carrying a weight that spoke of sleepless nights and terrible choices. When he saw Lena, something crumpled in his expression. "Baby," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for all of it." Lena stood frozen, unsure what to feel. Anger warred with the remnants of old affection, Resentment battled with the memory of better days. This man had taught her to ride a bike, had stayed up with her during thunderstorms when she was little, had read her stories until his voice went hoarse. This same man had also sold her out to save himself, had put her name on documents that made her a target, had created a disaster that had consumed both their lives. "We'll have time for family reconciliation later," Adrian said, not unkindly but firmly. "Right now we need information. Richard, sit down. Everyone else, positions." Carlos moved to his windows while Elena took up a position by the door. Michael pulled out a laptop and began setting up what looked like a portable communications hub. Adrian remained standing, his green eyes fixed on Richard Hart with an intensity that made the older man shrink into his chair. "Tell us about the architect," Adrian said without preamble. "Everything from the beginning." Richard ran a hand through his thinning hair. "It started about 8 months ago. I was in deep with the gambling debts, drinking too much, making stupid bets to try to win back what I'd lost. Classic spiral. Then I got an email at work." "At your work email?" Michael looked up sharply. "That's traceable." "It was anonymized, routed through multiple servers. Believe me, our IT department would have flagged it if they could trace it." Richard's voice was defensive. "The email was simple. Said they knew about my financial situation and my unique skill set. Offered me a way out." "What skill set?" Lena asked. Her father looked at her, and for the first time she saw pride mixed with shame in his expression. "I'm very good at finding money, baby. At tracking it through complex financial systems, identifying patterns, spotting laundering operations. It's what I do for Mercer and Associates, forensic accounting for litigation cases. I help lawyers prove their opponents are hiding assets or cooking books." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out those same skills make me valuable to people who want to expose criminal financial networks." "So the architect recruited you to build a comprehensive record of dirty money," Adrian said. "Yes, they sent me encrypted access to certain databases. I still don't know how they got that access, but it was legitimate. Banking records, wire transfers, shell company registrations. I started compiling it all into a master database. Names, dates, amounts, connections. A complete map of how money flows through the criminal underworld in the northeastern United States." "That would be worth killing for," Carlos said from his position by the window. "Multiple times over." The architect knew that. They promised me protection, promised that once the ledger was complete, they'd use it to bring down the entire network. Prosecutors would have everything they needed, airtight cases against hundreds of criminals. Money laundering, racketeering, corruption, it would all be exposed. Richard's hands trembled as he spoke. "And they promised me $500,000. Enough to pay off Victor, clear my other debts, and have enough left over to help Lena with her student loans." "Noble of you," Lena said, unable to keep the sarcasm out of her voice. "Using blood money to pay for my education. I thought it was the right thing." Richard's voice rose. "Taking down criminals, getting paid for it, helping my daughter. It all seemed perfect. Too perfect, I know that now. But I was desperate and drunk, and so tired of failing at everything." "When did Victor enter the picture, Isor?" Adrian asked, steering the conversation back. "About 3 months ago. I needed money for a short-term debt, just $5,000 to tide me over until the architect paid me. I'd heard Victor's name through some of my clients, knew he loaned money at high interest but would actually provide it. So I borrowed from him." Richard's laugh was hollow. "Except I couldn't pay it back when it came due. The 5,000 became 10, became 20, became 3 million with penalties and interest compounding daily." "Victor inflated the debt deliberately," Michael said, looking up from his laptop. "Standard practice for him. Get someone on the hook for a small amount, then use legal-sounding language and compound interest to balloon it into an unpayable sum. Creates leverage. When I couldn't pay, Victor's people came to my apartment, asked what I could offer instead. Richard couldn't look at Lena. "I panicked. I told them about you. Said you were my daughter, that you could be useful. I thought maybe you could work for Victor for a while, pay off the debt through labor or something." "Labor," Lena repeated flatly. "You thought Victor Kozlov would put me to work filing paperwork?" "I wasn't thinking clearly. I was terrified and they were threatening to kill me, and I said your name. The moment it came out, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. But it was too late. Then Victor started asking questions about what I did for work, who my clients were, what kind of information I had access to. Richard's voice dropped. He didn't care about the 3 million. He cared about the ledger. Somehow, he knew about it. And he wanted it. Adrian exchanged a glance with Michael. The architect has a leak. Or Victor has resources we haven't accounted for, Michael replied. If he's got someone inside banking systems or intelligence agencies, they could have flagged unusual data access patterns and traced them back to Richard. Either way, Victor knows the ledger exists and wants it destroyed before it destroys him. Adrian turned back to Richard. What did you tell him? Nothing. I swore I didn't know what he was talking about. But he's not stupid. He had my communications monitored, my movements tracked. When he couldn't find the ledger through surveillance, he decided to use Lena as leverage. Force me to hand it over or watch my daughter die. So you ran, Adrian said. I ran. Tried to warn Lena, but they'd already taken my phone. Left coded messages where I could, hoped she'd figure out something was wrong and hide. Richard finally looked directly at his daughter. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted to fix things, to finally do something right. Instead, I made everything worse. The silence that followed was heavy with things unsaid. Lena wanted to scream at him, to rage about his selfishness and stupidity. But looking at this broken man, this pathetic shadow of a father, she felt mostly emptiness. Where's the ledger? She asked quietly. Richard reached into his jacket and pulled out a small key. Old-fashioned, brass, with a numbered tag. Safety deposit box. First National Bank on Madison Avenue, box 2847. It's in your mother's maiden name, Elizabeth Winters. I thought that would keep it safe, a name with no connection to me or my current life. Adrian took the key, examining it. Who has access to this box? It's a dual-access box, requires 2 keys and 2 authorized signatures. Richard's voice was barely above a whisper. I have this key. The architect has the other one. Convenient, Michael said dryly. So even if Victor found the box, he couldn't open it without both keys. And if he grabbed you, you couldn't access it without the architect's cooperation. Security through mutual dependency, Adrian said. Smart, actually. It protected both parties from betrayal. Until Victor started targeting Lena, Richard said. The architect never planned for that. They thought the dual key system made everyone safe. They didn't account for Victor deciding to hurt my daughter to force my cooperation. Have you contacted the architect since this started? Adrian asked. I've tried. Our communication protocol is specific. I leave coded messages in certain online forums. They respond within 24 hours. But I haven't heard from them in 4 days. Either they've gone dark deliberately or... Richard trailed off. Or Victor found them, Carlos finished grimly. Adrian pulled out his phone and made a call. It was answered immediately. I need everything you can find on Safety Deposit Box 2847 at First National Bank, Madison Avenue. Account name Elizabeth Winters. Security protocols, access logs, everything. He paused, listening. Yes, I know it's after hours. Make it happen anyway. He ended the call and looked at Richard. If the architect has been compromised or eliminated, that second key becomes a critical piece. Victor will be looking for it, which means he'll be watching the architect's known associates, locations, and communication channels. We don't even know who the architect is, Lena pointed out. We know they have access to classified financial databases, sophisticated encryption capabilities, and enough resources to promise $500,000 in payment, Adrian counted off. That narrows it considerably. Michael, run analysis on anyone who's been moving against organized crime financial networks in the past year. Cross-reference with people who have the technical skills to execute this kind of operation. Michael's fingers flew across his keyboard. On it. Though, if the architect is any good, they won't show up in obvious searches. Nobody's perfect. Everyone leaves traces, Adrian turned to Richard. Did the architect ever mention their motivation? Why they wanted to expose these criminal networks? Richard thought for a moment. Once in a message, they said something about debts that couldn't be repaid in money, that some crimes deserved more than prison time. They deserved complete destruction of everything the criminals had built. Personal vendetta, Elena said. Someone who lost something to these networks and wants revenge. Or someone who worked within the system, got frustrated with legal limitations and decided to go outside it. Adrian's expression was thoughtful. Either way, They're ideologically motivated, which makes them both more reliable and more dangerous. They won't compromise or negotiate. They'll see this through to the end, no matter the cost. Even if it costs me my life? Lena asked. Adrian met her eyes. Ideologues don't think in terms of individual casualties. They think in terms of greater good. If sacrificing you meant bringing down a criminal empire, they'd consider it an acceptable loss. The blunt honesty was almost refreshing after all the careful dancing around implications. So we can't count on the architect to protect me. We can't count on anyone but ourselves, Adrian agreed, which is why we're going to take control of this situation. Michael, status on that bank research? Preliminary results coming in now. Box 2847 was opened 7 months ago. Fits the timeline. Access requires both keys plus biometric verification, fingerprint and signature match. Last access was... Michael's voice trailed off. 3 days ago, someone used the architect's key. Before or after the architect went dark? Adrian demanded. Based on Richard's communication timeline, it would have been right around when contact ceased. Michael pulled up security footage on his screen. Bank security cameras captured the access. Sending it to your phone now. Adrian's phone buzzed. He pulled up the footage and his expression darkened. Well, he said quietly, that's interesting. He turned the phone so everyone could see. The footage showed a woman in her 50s, professionally dressed, blonde hair pulled back. She approached the safety deposit area, presented her key, underwent biometric verification, and was escorted to the vault. Who is she? Lena asked. I don't know yet, Adrian said, but we're going to find out. Michael, run facial recognition. Carlos, check with our financial sector contacts. See if anyone recognizes her. Wait, Richard said, leaning forward to look at the image. I know her, or I've seen her. That's Margaret Chen. She's a federal prosecutor, Eastern District of New York. Handles financial crimes and corruption cases. The pieces suddenly clicked into place in Lena's mind. A federal prosecutor with access to financial databases, technical resources, and motivation to take down criminal networks, she said slowly. That's the architect. A prosecutor who's supposed to work within the legal system but decided to build an extrajudicial database of criminal evidence, Adrian added. Bold, reckless, and exactly the kind of ideologue who'd put innocent people at risk for the greater good. If she accessed the box 3 days ago, she might have taken the ledger already, Elena said, or she was checking on it, making sure it was secure before going dark. Michael brought up more information on his screen. Margaret Chen, age 53, with the prosecutor's office for 18 years. Specializes in white-collar crime and RICO cases. Reputation for being tenacious, some would say obsessive. Has taken down several major criminal organizations, but also has a history of aggressive investigative techniques. Meaning she bends rules, Carlos said. Meaning she breaks them when she thinks the end justifies the means. Adrian studied the image on his phone. If Chen is the architect, and if she's gone dark because Victor got to her, we have a serious problem. What kind of problem? Lena asked. The kind where Victor tortures a federal prosecutor to death to get information about the ledger's location and contents, Adrian said bluntly. Which means we need to find Chen before Victor does, or find out what happened to her if we're already too late. His phone rang. He answered on the first ring. Talk to me. He listened, his expression growing darker. Confirmed? I see. And the scene? Understood. He ended the call and looked at the assembled group. Margaret Chen was found dead in her apartment 2 hours ago. Apparent suicide, single gunshot wound to the head. NYPD is calling it death by her own hand. Investigation pending. Apparent suicide, Michael repeated skeptically. Victor's work? Almost certainly. He got to her, extracted whatever information he could, then staged her death to close the loop. Adrian's jaw was tight. Which means Victor now knows the ledger is in that safety deposit box, and he's going to make a move to access it. But he still needs both keys, Richard protested. I have one, and Chen had the other. If Victor killed her, he must have taken her key. Then he has half of what he needs. Adrian looked at the brass key sitting on the table. And he knows exactly who has the other half. Richard, you just became the most valuable target on Victor's list. What about Lena? Elena asked. She's listed as having access to the box. under her mother's maiden name, which Victor might not know yet, but once he starts digging into Richard's family history, he'll find it. Adrian was already moving, gathering equipment. We have maybe 12 hours before Victor puts together enough information to move on the bank. We need to get there first, access the box, and retrieve the ledger before he does. Just walk into a bank in Manhattan and open a safety deposit box? Lena asked. Won't Victor have people watching it? Absolutely he will. Which is why we're not just walking in, we're going to make it look like the most boring, routine transaction in banking history. Richard and Lena will go in as father and daughter, accessing their deceased mother's safety deposit box to settle estate matters. Michael will forge the necessary documentation. We'll have security in place, exit strategies planned, and contingencies for every scenario. And if Victor attacks while we're in the bank? Richard's voice was thin with fear. Then we turn a bank into a fortress and make him regret it. Adrian's smile was cold. Carlos, I want a full tactical team in place by morning. Elena, you're on Lena. Stay with her, protect her, get her out if things go sideways. Michael, documentation needs to be flawless. Richard, you're going to explain every detail of the ledger's structure so we know exactly what we're dealing with. Everyone moved into action except Lena, who stood in the middle of the cabin watching the controlled chaos around her. Tomorrow morning she was going to walk into a bank that would almost certainly be under surveillance by a criminal organization that wanted her dead. She'd access a safety deposit box containing information worth killing for, information that could bring down an empire or get her killed, depending on how the next few hours played out. And she was terrified. But underneath the fear was something else, a strange kind of clarity. For the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't just reacting, she was acting, making choices, taking control, fighting back instead of running. Adrian appeared beside her, his presence solid and reassuring despite everything. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. I can forge signatures, create a convincing enough facsimile that the bank might accept it. You could stay here where it's safe. Nothing is safe anymore, Lena replied. And I'm tired of other people making decisions about my life. If we're getting this ledger, I want to be there. I want to see what my father's choices have created, and I want to be part of ending it. Adrian studied her face. You've changed since this morning. Harder, sharper. Fear does that. Or maybe I was always this person and just never had a reason to find out. She met his eyes. You said I'd have a seat at the table. Tomorrow I'm taking it. Something that might have been approval flickered in Adrian's expression. Then we'll make sure you survive it, he said, because I have a feeling you're going to be very useful in the days to come. The question is whether you'll still be the same person when this is over. I already know the answer to that, Lena said quietly. I won't be. The person I was died the moment those men tried to grab me. Whoever I become next, that's still being decided. Good. Adrian's voice held an edge of satisfaction. Because the world doesn't need more victims. It needs people willing to do what's necessary to survive and protect what matters. He walked away to coordinate with his team, leaving Lena with that thought. What mattered? A week ago she would have said her job, her apartment, the small routine of her ordinary life. Now all of that seemed insignificant, like props in a play she'd stopped performing. What mattered was staying alive, making sure her father's mistakes didn't kill them both. And maybe, just maybe, finding a way to make Viktor Kozlov regret the day he decided Lena Hart was easy prey. Her phone buzzed with another message from Viktor. You're running out of time, Lena. Give me what I want or watch your world burn. Last chance. She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed a response. Tomorrow morning, First National Bank, Madison Avenue. Come and take it from me yourself. I'll be waiting. She showed the message to Adrian before sending it. This will escalate things dramatically, he warned. Good, I'm tired of running. Let's finish this. Adrian's smile was fierce and approving. Now you're thinking like a strategist. Send it. Lena hit send and felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. Tomorrow, one way or another, this would end. Either Viktor would take what he wanted and leave her alive, or Adrian would remove him from the board permanently, or they'd all go down in flames together. But it would end, and Lena would face it standing up, not cowering in a corner waiting for someone else to save her. She was done being saved. Tomorrow, she'd start saving herself. The night passed in fragments of sleep and planning. Lena dozed fitfully on the cabin's couch while Adrian and his team worked through scenarios at the dining table, their voices a low murmur of tactical discussions and contingency protocols. Every time she drifted off, she dreamed of her mother, not the sick woman fading in a hospital bed, but the vibrant person from earlier memories. In the dreams, Elizabeth Winters tried to tell her something important, but the words dissolved before Lena could understand them. She woke fully at 5 in the morning to find Adrian standing at the window, silhouetted against the pre-dawn gray. He held a cup of coffee and stared out at the forest with the stillness of someone accustomed to functioning on minimal sleep. "You should rest," Lena said, her voice rough. "I did. 3 hours, more than enough." He didn't turn around. "Your father is in the back room, still sleeping off the residual drugs and stress. Michael has the documentation ready. Carlos is coordinating the security team's positions around the bank. We move in 2 hours." Lena sat up, running her hands through her tangled hair. Her body ached from Elena's self-defense training and the accumulated tension of the past day. "Are you scared?" she asked. Now Adrian did turn, his green eyes catching the dim light. Fear is useful when it sharpens focus, destructive when it clouds judgment. I stay on the useful side of that line. "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have." He moved from the window and handed her his coffee cup. "Drink this. You'll need to be alert." The coffee was black and bitter, exactly what Lena needed. She drained half the cup while Adrian settled into the chair across from her. "What happens after we get the ledger?" she asked. "Assuming we survive getting it, what then?" "We analyze the contents, determine what Victor is most afraid of being exposed, and use that information to force a confrontation on our terms." Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing a business transaction rather than life and death. "Victor wants the ledger destroyed because it contains evidence that could dismantle his empire. But empires aren't just about money, they're about power, connections, reputation. Destroy any one of those pillars, and the whole structure becomes vulnerable. So we threaten to release the information unless he backs off. We threaten to release specific pieces of information to specific people who would do maximum damage to his operations." Adrian's smile was cold. "Victor has enemies, rivals who would love nothing more than to exploit his weaknesses. Law enforcement agencies that have been building cases against him but lack evidence. Political figures whose careers would benefit from his downfall. The ledger gives us leverage over all of them." "You're talking about blackmail." "I'm talking about strategy. Blackmail is crude, demanding money for silence. Strategy is identifying pressure points and applying force precisely where it creates the desired outcome." Adrian leaned forward slightly. "Victor believes power comes from fear and money. I believe it comes from information and timing. We're about to prove which philosophy is correct." Lena thought about that while she finished the coffee. Her father had spent months compiling the ledger, thinking he was working for justice. Instead, he'd created a weapon that could be used by anyone ruthless enough to wield it. "What about Margaret Chen?" she asked. "The architect. If she really was killed by Victor, doesn't she deserve some kind of justice?" "Justice is a luxury we can't afford right now. Survival comes first." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "But if it helps, know that Victor eliminating Chen was a tactical error. Federal prosecutors have colleagues, supervisors, cases that get reassigned when they die. Chen's death will trigger investigations that Victor can't control. He bought himself time, but he also started a clock counting down to his exposure." "You almost sound like you respect him." "I respect competent opponents. Victor is very competent, ruthless, strategic, well-resourced, which is precisely why he's dangerous and needs to be removed." Adrian stood, checking his watch. "Get cleaned up and dressed. Michael prepared appropriate clothing for the bank visit. You need to look like a bereaved daughter handling family business, not someone running for her life." Lena found the clothes in the bedroom, a simple black dress, professional but understated, with shoes that were comfortable enough to run in if necessary. Someone, probably Elena, had included minimal makeup and a hairbrush. She transformed herself into the role Adrian needed her to play, watching in the mirror as Lena Hart, terrified fugitive, became Lena Winters, grieving daughter settling her mother's estate. The face looking back at her was composed, even calm. Only her eyes gave away the truth. They were harder now, carrying a wariness that hadn't been there before. When she emerged, her father was awake and sitting at the table with Michael, reviewing documents. Richard looked up and something crumpled in his expression. "You look just like your mother," he said quietly. "She wore a dress like that to her sister's funeral. I'd forgotten until just now." Lena didn't know what to say to that. The grief in her father's voice was real, but so was everything else. The lies, the debts, the choices that had led them here. "The documentation is perfect," Michael said, breaking the awkward silence. He spread papers across the table. "Death certificate for Elizabeth Winters, estate settlement paperwork, legal authorization for both of you to access the safety deposit box. The bank will have no reason to question any of it." "What about Victor's people?" Richard asked, his hands trembling slightly. "If they're watching the bank—" "They are watching," Carlos said, entering from outside. He brought with him the smell of cold morning air and gun oil. Confirmed at least 4 hostiles in position around the bank perimeter. Surveillance vehicles on both corners, foot teams rotating through the coffee shop across the street, and the office building next door. "Only 4? Adrian looked skeptical. "Victor's throwing a surprisingly light net." "Because he's not planning to grab them at the bank," Elena said, joining the group. "Too public, too many witnesses, too many security cameras. He's waiting to see if they actually access the box, then he'll move when they leave with the ledger." "Smart," Adrian acknowledged, "which means we need to be smarter. Carlos, I want the extraction team ready at 3 different exit points. The moment Lena and Richard leave that bank, we assume active pursuit. Michael, you'll monitor all communications, police, bank security, and any encrypted channels Victor's people might use. Elena, you're with me in Overwatch position." "What about me?" Lena asked. "You walk into that bank, access the box with your father, retrieve the ledger, and walk out like nothing unusual is happening." Adrian met her eyes. "Victor's people will be watching for signs of fear or deception. You need to be exactly what you're pretending to be, a daughter handling the sad but necessary business of her mother's estate. Can you do that?" Lena thought about all the times she'd smiled through difficult client meetings, maintained professional composure while her personal life was falling apart, projected confidence she didn't feel because the situation demanded it. "Yes," she said, "I can do that." "Good." Adrian handed her a small device that looked like a designer watch. "This is a tracker and emergency beacon. If something goes wrong and we get separated, press the side button twice, and my team will converge on your location within minutes, but only use it as a last resort. Activating it will tell Victor exactly where you are." The weight of the watch on her wrist felt like responsibility and danger combined. Lena fastened it carefully, then turned to her father. "Are you ready for this?" she asked him. Richard Hart looked older than his 56 years, worn down by fear and consequences. But he nodded. "I got us into this mess," he said. "Least I can do is help get us out." They left the cabin as the sun was rising, painting the forest in shades of gold and amber that seemed too beautiful for the darkness of their mission. 2 vehicles headed toward Manhattan, Adrian's team in one, Lena and Richard in the other, with Carlos driving and Elena riding security. The drive took 90 minutes through increasingly heavy morning traffic. Lena watched the city wake up around them, commuters heading to work, coffee shops opening, the ordinary rhythms of urban life continuing oblivious to the deadly game being played in their midst. "You remember when we used to come into the city?" Richard said suddenly, breaking the silence. "You were maybe 8 or 9. We'd take the train in and spend the day at museums. The Natural History Museum was your favorite." "The dinosaurs," Lena said, the memory surfacing unexpectedly. "I wanted to be a paleontologist." "You wanted to be everything. Paleontologist, astronaut, detective, chef. You had so many dreams." Richard's voice was thick. "I'm sorry I wasn't there to help you achieve them. Sorry I became just another obstacle you had to overcome." Lena wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the protective barrier of resentment. But looking at this broken man, she felt something shift inside her. "You were there when Mom died," she said quietly. "You held it together long enough to get me through the funeral and the first few months. I know it destroyed you, losing her. I watched it happen." "That's not an excuse." "No, but it's an explanation." Lena turned to look at him directly. "You made terrible choices, Dad. Choices that put me in danger and might get us both killed. But I understand why you made them, even if I can't forgive them yet." Yet, Richard repeated, latching onto the word like a lifeline. That means maybe someday, maybe. If we survive today. If we can fix this. Lena's voice hardened. But first, we need to get through what's coming, so I need you focused and functioning, not falling apart. Can you do that? Her father straightened slightly, something almost like pride flickering in his eyes. Yes, he said. I can do that. They arrived at the bank at 9:15, precisely the time Adrian had calculated would be optimal. Early enough to avoid peak crowds, but late enough that the security team would be settled into their routine. The building was classic Manhattan architecture, all marble and brass and old money respectability. Carlos circled the block once, his trained eyes cataloging threats. Black sedan at the northeast corner, 2 occupants. Gray van west side, driver and at least 1 passenger visible. Foot surveillance at the coffee shop, 2 males, 30s, trying too hard to look casual. Victor's people, Elena confirmed. But they're holding position, not moving to intercept. We're clear to proceed. The vehicle stopped at the main entrance. Lena took a deep breath, consciously relaxing her shoulders and smoothing her expression into something appropriately somber. Remember, Elena said, routine banking business, bereaved family members. Nothing to attract attention. Lena and Richard stepped out of the vehicle and walked toward the bank entrance. Lena could feel eyes on them. Victor's surveillance teams logging their arrival, reporting to whoever was coordinating the operation. She forced herself not to look around, to walk with the measured pace of someone who had nothing to fear because they had nothing to hide. The bank's interior was hushed and elegant, designed to make wealth feel comfortable and privilege feel natural. A receptionist looked up with a professional smile as they approached. Good morning. How may I help you? We have an appointment to access a safety deposit box, Lena said, her voice steady. Box 2847, under the name Elizabeth Winters. Of course. May I see your identification and documentation? Michael's forgeries passed inspection without question. The receptionist made notes in her system, then gestured to a well-dressed man who'd appeared from a side office. Mr. Brennan will assist you with accessing the vault. Please follow him. They were escorted through a secure door into a quieter section of the bank. Mr. Brennan, 50-ish, with the bearing of someone who'd spent decades handling other people's valuables, led them down a hallway to an elevator. I'm very sorry for your loss, he said as they descended. Estate matters are never easy. Thank you, Lena replied, playing the role. Our mother was very organized. She left clear instructions about her affairs. That does make things simpler. The elevator opened onto a basement level that was all business. Concrete floors, fluorescent lighting, rows of safety deposit boxes lining the walls like metal graves. Box 2847 is in Section C. You'll need both keys and biometric verification. Richard produced his key. Lena's fingerprint had been added to the authorized access list when her father had set up the box under her mother's name, one more layer of security that had now become their way in. Mr. Brennan inserted his master key, Richard added his, and Lena pressed her thumb to the scanner. The mechanism clicked and the box slid free. I'll give you privacy, Mr. Brennan said, gesturing to a small viewing room. Take all the time you need. They carried the box to the viewing room and closed the door. Only then did Richard's composure crack slightly, his hand shaking as he lifted the lid. Inside was a single external hard drive, smaller than Lena expected. Matte black, unmarked, utterly unremarkable. This tiny piece of technology contained information worth killing for. The ledger, Richard whispered. Everything I compiled for the architect. Every transaction, every account, every name connected to the criminal financial network in the Northeastern Corridor. 15 years of data. Lena picked up the drive, feeling its weight. So light, so small, yet it held the power to destroy empires. How did you know Chen wouldn't just take it and cut you out? She asked. The data is encrypted with a dual key system, same as the deposit box. I have one encryption key, Chen had the other. The files can't be decrypted without both. It was supposed to ensure neither of us could betray the other. Richard's laugh was bitter. Except Victor tortured Chen for her key before killing her, which means he now has half of what he needs to decrypt the ledger. And you have the other half. Yes. Which makes me a target until Victor gets it, or until the data is released and becomes worthless to him. Lena slipped the hard drive into her purse. A detail Michael had insisted on, something normal for a woman to carry that wouldn't attract attention. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. "You have the package, but we've got a problem. Victor just arrived. Personally. He's entering the bank with 6 men, all armed. This is an extraction, not surveillance. Get to the emergency exit on the sublevel, now." Her blood went cold. "We need to move. Victor's here." Richard's face went pale. "Here? In the bank?" "But that's desperate," Lena finished, "which makes it dangerous. Come on." They left the viewing room and immediately heard it. Raised voices from the main floor above, the sharp tone of men used to being obeyed. Mr. Brennan appeared in the hallway, his professional composure cracking. "I'm sorry, but there seems to be some kind of disturbance upstairs. Bank security is handling it, but I need to ask you to remain." The elevator dinged. Lena grabbed her father's arm and pulled him away from the viewing room toward the back of the vault area where emergency exit signs glowed red. Behind them, the elevator doors opened and she heard Viktor Kozlov's voice for the first time. "Search every room. They're down here somewhere, and they have what we came for." His accent was subtle but present, adding an edge to already sharp words. Footsteps spread out through the vault area, methodical and professional. Lena and Richard reached the emergency exit, and she pushed the door open, praying it wouldn't trigger an alarm. It didn't. Adrian's team had probably disabled it remotely. They found themselves in a service corridor, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. "This way," Richard said, surprising her by taking the lead. "I studied the building layout when I first rented the box. Service corridors connect to the parking garage." They ran through a maze of concrete hallways that smelled of dust and industrial cleaner. Behind them, voices echoed, Victor's men giving chase. Richard's knowledge of the layout saved them. He led her through 2 turns that put solid walls between them and their pursuers, then to a service elevator that descended even further into the building's infrastructure. "The parking garage connects to the subway system through an old utility tunnel," Richard explained as the elevator descended. "The bank was built in the 20s, back when they connected everything underground. Most people have forgotten it exists." The elevator opened onto a parking level that was poorly lit and largely empty. Richard pointed to a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." "Through there. The tunnel is maybe 200 yards, comes up in the subway station on 42nd. They were halfway across the parking level when headlights blazed behind them. A vehicle had followed them down, Victor's people, relentless and professional. "Run!" Lena shouted. They sprinted for the door as the vehicle accelerated toward them. Lena's shoes, chosen for their ability to run in, proved their worth as she reached the door first and wrenched it open. The tunnel beyond was exactly as Richard described: old brick, dripping water, dim emergency lighting creating pools of shadow. They ran into the darkness as the vehicle screeched to a stop and doors opened behind them. "Stop! We only want the drive. Give it to us and you can walk away." Like hell they could. Lena knew that voice belonged to someone who'd killed before and wouldn't hesitate to kill again. The tunnel seemed endless, their footsteps echoing off brick walls while pursuit closed the distance behind them. Lena's lungs burned and her legs screamed protest, but fear drove her forward. Light appeared ahead, the subway station. They burst out of the tunnel into the controlled chaos of the morning commute, dozens of people moving through the station oblivious to the deadly chase happening in their midst. Lena pulled Richard into the crowd, using bodies as cover. She risked a glance back and saw 2 of Victor's men emerge from the tunnel, scanning the crowd with professional efficiency. Her phone buzzed. "Adrian, I see you on the subway cameras. Blue line platform, 3rd car, doors closing in 45 seconds. Be on it." She grabbed Richard and pushed through the crowd toward the blue line platform. A train sat with doors open, commuters streaming on and off. "There!" One of Victor's men had spotted them. Lena and Richard shoved onto the train just as the warning chime sounded. The doors started to close. Through the window, Lena saw Victor's men running toward them, hands reaching for weapons they couldn't draw without causing panic. The doors sealed. The train began to move. For a moment, Lena thought they'd made it. Then she saw Viktor Kozlov himself on the platform, watching the train depart with an expression of cold calculation. He raised his phone to his ear, speaking rapidly. "He's calling ahead," Richard said, breathless. "He'll have people waiting at every stop." Lena's phone buzzed again. Different number, one she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Miss Hart." Victor's voice was smooth, cultured, absolutely devoid of warmth. That was impressive, but ultimately pointless. I have people at every station on that line. You can run, but you're just delaying the inevitable. Then why call? Lena managed to keep her voice steady. To gloat? To make an offer. You have something I need. I'm willing to pay for it. $1 million, cash for the hard drive and the encryption key. You and your father walk away wealthy and alive. Everyone wins. Except the hundreds of criminals whose operations would be exposed if that data went public. Those criminals, as you call them, are businessmen operating in markets the law refuses to acknowledge. But that's irrelevant to you. What's relevant is staying alive long enough to spend $1 million. Victor's tone sharpened. Or you can keep running, keep fighting, and watch your father die slowly while you contemplate your choices. I'm a patient man, Miss Hart, but my patience has limits. The train was slowing for the next station. Through the windows, Lena saw men in dark suits taking positions on the platform. I need to think about it, she said. You have until this train reaches Grand Central. That gives you 7 minutes. Choose wisely. The call ended. Richard was staring at her with hope and fear mixed in his expression. $1 million, Lena. We could take it. Pay off everyone. Start over somewhere new. And trust a man who murders federal prosecutors? Lena shook her head. He's not offering us money, Dad. He's offering us a quick death instead of a slow one. Then what do we do? Lena looked at the hard drive in her purse, then at the men waiting at the next station, then at her phone. Adrian's last message was still on the screen. Trust the process. We trust that Adrian has a plan, she said, and we stay alive long enough to see it through. The train pulled into the station. The doors opened and Victor's men stepped on, scanning faces with mechanical efficiency. Lena pulled Richard toward the far end of the car, using the crowd as cover. Then her phone buzzed with a new message from Adrian, and a slow smile spread across her face as she read it. Next station, exit to the right. Count 3 pillars, take the service stairs down. Someone will be waiting. And Lena, when this is over, remind me to never underestimate you again. The train began to move again, carrying them toward whatever came next. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Lena felt something other than fear. She felt ready. The next station appeared through the tunnel darkness like salvation wrapped in fluorescent light. Lena counted the seconds until the train slowed, her hand tight around her father's arm while Victor's men moved methodically through the car, checking faces with professional thoroughness. The doors opened and Lena moved, pulling Richard with her into the surge of commuters. They flowed with the crowd toward the exit, and she counted pillars, 1, 2, 3, then spotted the service stairs exactly where Adrian had said they'd be. A door marked Maintenance Access stood slightly ajar, impossible to notice unless you were looking for it. They slipped through and into a stairwell that smelled of concrete and machine oil. The door closed behind them with a solid click, muffling the sounds of the station above. Down, came a voice from below. Carlos appeared from the shadows, weapon drawn but pointed safely downward. Move fast. They'll check the service areas within 90 seconds. They descended 2 flights to a sub-basement level that existed on no public maps. Carlos led them through a maze of utility corridors where massive pipes carried water and steam through the city's infrastructure. The air was hot and damp, filled with the sound of rushing water and mechanical hums. "Where are we going?" Richard gasped, struggling to keep pace. "Somewhere Victor can't follow without starting a war he's not ready for," Carlos replied cryptically. They emerged into what looked like an abandoned subway platform, one of the ghost stations Lena had read about, remnants of New York's early transit system, sealed off and forgotten by everyone except those who knew where to look. Adrian stood in the center of the platform, his phone pressed to his ear, surrounded by tactical equipment and 3 additional team members Lena hadn't seen before. He looked up as they approached, and something like relief flickered in his expression before his usual cold composure returned. "I have them," he said into the phone. "Yes, the package is secure. Proceed with Phase 2. He ended the call and focused on Lena. "The hard drive?" She pulled it from her purse and held it up. "Right here. But Victor offered us $1 million for it. He called during the train ride." "Of course he did. Negotiation from a position of false strength. Make you think you have options while he closes the trap." Adrian took the drive and handed it to Michael, who immediately connected it to a laptop. "Did he give you a deadline?" 7 minutes. We're past that now. which means he's escalating to more aggressive tactics. Michael, how long to decrypt and copy the contents? If Richard provides his encryption key, maybe 20 minutes. The dual key system is sophisticated but not unbreakable. Michael looked at Richard. I'll need the key and any associated passphrases. Richard hesitated, decades of caution warring with present necessity. If I give you that key, the ledger becomes accessible. Anyone could use it. Anyone already can, Adrian said flatly. Victor tortured Margaret Chen for her half. The only question is whether we access it first and control how it's used, or whether Victor gets both keys and destroys the only evidence that could bring him down. He's right, Dad, Lena said quietly. We're past the point of protecting secrets. Now we're just trying to survive. Richard's shoulders sagged in defeat. He pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket, pages filled with alphanumeric sequences and coded references. The key is split across 3 phrases from my wedding vows. Elizabeth loved puzzles, loved codes. I thought it would keep her memory alive while protecting the data. Something in his voice made Lena's throat tight. For all his failures, Richard Hart had loved her mother deeply. That love had survived Elizabeth's death, survived Richard's spiral into debt and desperation, survived everything except his terrible choices. Michael took the notebook and began working, his fingers flying across the keyboard while progress bars crept forward on the screen. The ghost station around them felt like a liminal space, neither fully present nor fully past, existing in the cracks of the city where normal rules didn't apply. Victor will have people monitoring transit cameras, Elena said, appearing from a side tunnel where she'd been standing guard. He knows we're somewhere in the system. It's only a matter of time before he finds the right access point. Let him look, Adrian replied. This platform is off every official map, and the access points are controlled by people who owe me favors. But we won't stay long. As soon as Michael has the data copied and analyzed, we move to end game. Which is? Lena asked. Adrian's smile was cold and precise. We give Victor exactly what he wants, a meeting to exchange the ledger for your freedom. Except we control the location, the timing, and the outcome. No more running, no more reacting. We end this tonight. You're going to kill him, Richard said. It wasn't a question. I'm going to remove him from the board. Whether that involves his death depends entirely on his choices. Adrian checked his watch. Michael, status? Decryption at 60%. The data structure is incredible. Richard wasn't exaggerating. This is 15 years of comprehensive financial intelligence. Account numbers, transaction records, shell company registrations, names of everyone from street-level money launderers to high-level political figures. If this went public, it would collapse criminal operations from Boston to D.C. Can you isolate the sections most damaging to Victor specifically? Adrian asked. Already doing it. Victor's name appears in connection with, Jesus, over 400 separate transactions totaling nearly $2 billion. And that's just the direct evidence. The indirect connections probably triple that. Adrian's expression sharpened with interest. $2 billion. That's empire-level wealth. No wonder he's desperate to keep it buried. There's more, Michael continued, his voice tight. Victor's been moving money for some very dangerous people. I'm seeing connections to 3 different terrorist organizations, 2 hostile foreign governments, and at least 1 high-ranking U.S. senator. If this senator's involvement became public, it would trigger federal investigations that Victor couldn't survive, Adrian finished. That's our leverage. We threaten to expose his connection to domestic terrorism funding and watch him choose between losing everything or backing away from the Hart family permanently. He won't just back away, Carlos said from his position by the tunnel entrance. Men like Victor don't surrender. They escalate until someone dies. Then someone dies. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact. But it won't be anyone in this room. The certainty in his tone should have been reassuring. Instead, it reminded Lena that Adrian Voss was exactly as dangerous as Victor Kozlov, just pointed in a different direction. She was trusting a man who talked about killing with the same casual tone most people used to discuss the weather. Her phone buzzed. Victor, again. You missed your deadline, Miss Hart? That was unwise. I'm currently watching your apartment building burn. Such a shame. I'm sure you had sentimental items stored there. Next, I think I'll visit your former employer. See how many marketing executives survive a structural gas leak. Your choice, the hard drive, or I keep destroying pieces of your life until there's nothing left. Lena's hands went numb. He's burning my apartment building. Adrian took her phone, read the message, and his expression went flat and cold. Michael, verify, he said, tossing the phone to his tech specialist. Michael pulled up news feeds and security camera access. Within seconds, he had confirmation. Fire reported at Lena's address 12 minutes ago. 3 alarm blaze, cause under investigation, but the fire marshal is already calling it suspicious. He looked up. Victor's not bluffing. He's systematically destroying anything connected to her identity. My neighbors, Lena whispered. There are families in that building. Kids. Building was evacuated. No casualties reported, Michael said quickly. But yeah, Victor just committed arson and endangered civilians to make a point. The fear Lena had been holding in check transformed into something else. Pure, incandescent rage. Victor had tried to kidnap her, hunted her through the city, and now he was burning down her home and threatening innocent people to force her compliance. No more running, she said, her voice cold and clear. Adrian, you said you'd give me a seat at the table. I want it now. I want to be there when you take him down. Lena, her father started, but she cut him off. No. You made choices that put me here, Dad. Now I'm making my own choices. I'm not hiding while Adrian handles everything. I'm not waiting in some safe house wondering if Victor will find me anyway. I'm ending this myself. Adrian studied her with those unsettling green eyes, and she saw him making calculations, weighing risks against potential gains. If you're there, you become a target, he said. Victor will try to use you as leverage or eliminate you as a witness. You'll be in more danger than if you stayed hidden. I'm already in danger. At least this way I control some of it. Fair point. Adrian turned to Elena. Can you keep her alive in a hostile confrontation? If she follows orders and doesn't do anything stupid, yes. Elena looked at Lena. But the moment you freeze or panic or make an emotional decision, you become a liability. Can you stay cold when it matters? Lena thought about Elena's training, about watching pursuit vehicles crash without flinching, about sending Victor messages that dared him to come after her. Yes, she said, I can stay cold. Adrian nodded slowly. Then you're in. But understand this. Once we start, there's no backing out. No changing your mind when things get violent, because they will get violent. Viktor Kozlov doesn't surrender, and I don't take prisoners. Whatever happens in that room, you'll have to live with it for the rest of your life. I can live with Viktor Kozlov being dead, Lena said flatly. Can you? Adrian's smile was fierce and approving. Michael, how long until we have everything we need from the ledger? 5 minutes. I'm creating multiple encrypted copies and distributing them through secure channels. Even if Victor destroys every physical version, the information will survive. Good. Send copies to 3 separate law firms with instructions to release everything if anything happens to Richard, Lena, or me. That's our insurance policy. Adrian pulled out his phone and made a call. It's time. Set up the meeting. Pier 47, Warehouse 3, midnight tonight. Tell him we'll exchange the original hard drive and both encryption keys for guaranteed safe passage and permanent cessation of all activities targeting the Hart family. No lawyers, no intermediaries. Victor and me, face to face, final negotiation. He listened for a moment, then smiled coldly. He'll come. Men like Victor can't resist the chance to personally reclaim what's theirs. His ego won't allow anything else. The call ended and Adrian addressed the group. We have 12 hours to prepare. Carlos, I want the warehouse rigged with every advantage we can build in. Elena, full tactical loadout for everyone, including Lena. Michael, continue analyzing the ledger. I want to know every piece of leverage we have before I walk into that meeting. What about me? Richard asked, his voice small. You're the bait that makes this believable, Adrian said. Victor knows you have the encryption key. Your presence confirms we're serious about the exchange, but you stay behind protective cover the entire time. And if shooting starts, you follow Carlos's orders without question. And if Victor just tries to kill us all the moment we arrive, Richard's fear was palpable. Then we kill him first. Adrian's tone was absolutely calm. I've been removing problems like Viktor Kozlov for 15 years. I'm very, very good at it. Trust the process. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of preparation that felt surreal in its intensity. They relocated to another of Adrian's properties, an industrial loft in Brooklyn that functioned as a tactical operations center. Weapons were cleaned and loaded, body armor distributed, communications equipment tested and retested. Elena put Lena through accelerated training on basic weapon handling and combat positioning. Lena learned how to hold a pistol properly, how to take cover effectively, how to move through a hostile environment without making herself an easy target. "You won't be doing any shooting if things go right," Elena explained. "But if things go wrong, I need to know you won't accidentally kill one of us while trying to defend yourself." Michael worked through the ledger systematically, building a comprehensive picture of Victor's empire and its vulnerabilities. The data was staggering in its scope, hundreds of millions of dollars flowing through legitimate businesses that were anything but, politicians and judges and police officials all connected to Victor's network through money and favors. "This isn't just organized crime," Michael said, showing Adrian a particularly damning section. "This is institutional corruption on a massive scale. If we released everything, it would trigger federal investigations, Senate hearings, probably criminal prosecutions reaching into high levels of government." "Which is exactly why Victor will do anything to keep it buried," Adrian replied, "and exactly why it's our nuclear option if he refuses to back down." As the day wore into evening, Lena found her father sitting alone in a corner of the loft, staring at nothing. She sat down beside him, unsure what to say. "I never wanted this for you," Richard said quietly. "When your mother was dying, I promised her I'd take care of you, keep you safe, help you build a good life. I failed at everything else. But that promise, I thought at least I could keep that one." "You did keep me safe," Lena said. "For years after Mom died, you held it together long enough to get me through high school and into college. You came to my graduation even though I know you were in the middle of one of your bad periods. You tried, Dad. You just couldn't sustain it." "That's not good enough." "No, but it's something." Lena took his hand, surprised by how fragile it felt. "We're going to get through tonight. Adrian knows what he's doing, and I'm not going to let Victor win. But after this is over, after we're safe, you need to get help. Real help. Therapy, rehab, whatever it takes to deal with the gambling and the drinking and all the things you've been running from. And if I can't? If I'm too broken to fix? Then at least you tried. That's all anyone can ask." Lena squeezed his hand. "I'm not ready to forgive you yet, Dad. Maybe I never will be completely. But I'm not ready to give up on you either, so don't give up on yourself." Richard's eyes were wet. "When did you get so strong?" "Probably when I had to run for my life through Manhattan because my father sold me to criminals," Lena said, but she smiled slightly to take the edge off. "Fear makes you stronger or it breaks you. I decided not to break." At 11 o'clock, they loaded into 2 vehicles and headed for the waterfront. The warehouse district was exactly what Lena expected. Abandoned buildings, rusted shipping containers, streetlights that flickered or didn't work at all. The perfect place for a confrontation that couldn't afford witnesses. Warehouse 3 was a massive structure of corrugated metal and broken windows. Carlos had spent the afternoon rigging it with strategic advantages. Cameras hidden in the rafters, weapons caches positioned at key points, and what he cheerfully called surprise deterrents that Lena suspected were explosives. "Victor will bring a team," Adrian explained as they took positions. "Probably 6 to 8 people, all armed, all professional. But they'll be expecting a trap, which means they'll be cautious. That caution is their weakness. They'll spend time clearing the space and checking for threats instead of moving aggressively." "And we use that time to control the environment," Elena finished. She handed Lena a bulletproof vest and a small pistol. "Vest stays on the entire time. Gun is loaded but safety engaged. Don't touch it unless I specifically tell you to. Your job is to stay behind cover and look like valuable bait." "How reassuring," Lena muttered, but she put on the vest and secured the weapon. They waited in the darkness, watching the waterfront through night vision equipment. At 5 minutes to midnight, headlights appeared, a convoy of 3 vehicles moving slowly toward the warehouse. "Here we go," Adrian said calmly. "Everyone to positions. Remember, we control this space. Let them come to us." Victor's vehicles stopped outside the warehouse. Doors opened and men emerged, weapons ready, moving with practiced coordination. They surrounded the building, checking approaches and sightlines before Victor himself stepped out of the center vehicle. Even at a distance, Lena could see why men feared him. Victor Kozlov moved with absolute confidence, as if violence was just another business tool he'd mastered long ago. He wore an expensive suit despite the industrial setting, and his silver hair caught the moonlight as he surveyed the warehouse with cold calculation. He brought 8 men, Carlos reported from his overwatch position, all armed with automatic weapons, 2 snipers taking elevated positions on the surrounding buildings. This is a full tactical deployment. Which tells us he's not here to negotiate, Adrian replied. He's here to take what he wants and eliminate anyone who knows about it. Good. That makes what comes next easier. Adrian stepped into the light spilling from the warehouse's open bay door, hands visible and empty. "Victor," he called out. "Glad you could make it." Victor's eyes found him, and something like recognition crossed his face. "Adrian Voss. I should have known you'd be involved in this." Victor's accent was more pronounced in person, his English precise but colored by his origins. "You have a habit of interfering in matters that don't concern you. The targeting civilians in my city concerns me." Adrian's voice was calm but carried clearly across the space between them. "You tried to abduct Lena Hart in broad daylight. You burned down her apartment building. You threatened her workplace. These are not the actions of a rational businessman. These are the actions of someone desperate and losing control." "I am perfectly in control." Victor took several steps forward, his security team moving with him in coordinated formation. "You have something that belongs to me. Return it, along with everyone who's seen its contents, and this ends peacefully." "Everyone who's seen it," Adrian repeated. "So you want me to hand over Lena, her father, and my entire team for elimination? That's not much of a negotiation." "It's the only negotiation available. The ledger contains information that could destroy me. I can't allow it to exist, which means I can't allow anyone who's accessed it to survive." Victor's smile was chilling. "I respect your reputation, Adrian. Under other circumstances, I might even offer you employment. But tonight, you're in my way, and I remove obstacles." "Funny," Adrian said. "I was about to say the same thing about you." The warehouse lights blazed to life, flooding the entire area with harsh illumination. Victor's men immediately took cover, weapons raised, but found themselves surrounded by Adrian's team. Elena on the catwalk above, Carlos positioned behind shipping containers, Michael covering the rear entrance, and 3 others in strategic positions that created overlapping fields of fire. "You're surrounded," Adrian said simply. "Outgunned, outmaneuvered, and out of options. Your snipers on the surrounding buildings are already neutralized. My people got to them 10 minutes before you arrived. This warehouse is completely under my control." Victor's expression didn't change, but Lena saw tension in his shoulders, the slight shift in stance that suggested he was reassessing the situation. "If you kill me, my organization will destroy everyone you care about," Victor said. "I have contingencies, Adrian. People who will carry out my final orders if I don't check in by sunrise. Those people work for money, not loyalty, and I've already made arrangements to pay them more than you could. Your contingencies are neutralized." Adrian pulled out a phone and held it up. "But I'm not here to kill you, Victor. I'm here to give you a choice." "What choice?" "Complete withdrawal from all activities involving the Hart family, guaranteed in writing and verified through mutual contacts we both trust. In exchange, the ledger stays buried. No public release, no federal investigations, no collapse of your empire." Adrian's voice was level. "Or refuse, and I release everything to every law enforcement agency, media outlet, and rival organization that would benefit from your destruction. Your choice: walk away with your empire intact, or lose everything trying to win a fight you've already lost." Victor was silent for a long moment, his cold eyes calculating odds and outcomes. "And if I agree, what guarantee do I have that you won't release the information anyway?" "My word, which in certain circles is worth more than contracts or cash." Adrian gestured to the shadows where Lena stood with her father. "Lena Hart is under my protection now. She has value to me alive and unmolested. Killing her, or attempting to, would cost me something I don't want to lose." "That's your guarantee, mutual interest in her survival." Lena stepped forward into the light, ignoring Elena's hissed warning. She wanted Victor to see her face, to understand that she wasn't just a piece in someone else's game anymore. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, her voice carrying across the warehouse. "You tried to make me a victim, and instead you created an enemy. Walk away now, or I'll spend the rest of my life making sure everyone knows exactly what you are." Victor's attention shifted to her, and for the first time Lena saw something other than cold calculation in his expression, a flicker of what might have been surprise or possibly respect. "You have fire," he said. "Your father is a weak fool, but you're different. If circumstances were different, I could use someone like you." "I'd rather die." "That can be arranged." But Victor's tone had shifted slightly, less absolute certainty and more tactical consideration. He looked back at Adrian. "This ledger, you've made copies?" "Multiple copies, distributed through channels you can't touch. The original goes into a vault that requires both of us to access. Insurance against future betrayals from either side." "Smart." Victor gestured to his men, who lowered their weapons slightly but remained alert. "I want to see the data. Verify it's authentic before I agree to anything." Adrian nodded to Michael, who projected files onto a screen that descended from the warehouse ceiling. Financial records scrolled past, thousands of transactions and connections that painted a comprehensive picture of Victor's entire operation. Victor watched in silence, his expression unreadable. But Lena saw his hands clench and unclench at his sides, the only outward sign that he understood exactly how devastating this information would be if released. "This is 15 years of my work," he said quietly. "Everything I've built, every connection I've cultivated, all of it documented in excruciating detail." "Yes," Adrian confirmed, "which is why you're going to agree to my terms. Because losing Lana Hart as a target costs you nothing, but losing your empire costs you everything." The silence stretched while Victor made his calculation. Lena held her breath, knowing that the next words out of his mouth would determine whether they all survived the night. "I agree to your terms," Victor finally said. "With one addition, I want the name of the architect. Margaret Chen didn't work alone. Someone helped her build this database, someone with technical skills and access she didn't have. I want that name." Adrian glanced at Michael, who shook his head fractionally. "Chen's communications were anonymized beyond our ability to trace," Adrian said. "Whoever her partner was, they're a ghost. We don't have a name to give you." "Then find one. Because I guarantee they're still out there, and they have access to everything Chen compiled. Until they're neutralized, the ledger remains a threat to me." Victor's voice hardened. "Get me that name within 30 days, or our agreement is void." 30 days, Adrian agreed. "We'll find your ghost. In exchange, you sign documentation right now guaranteeing the Hart family's safety, with financial penalties enforced through our mutual contacts if you violate the terms." "Acceptable." Michael produced papers that had clearly been prepared in advance. Victor read through them carefully, his face revealing nothing, then signed with a pen that probably cost more than Lena's former monthly rent. "It's done," Victor said, handing the documents back. "The Hart family is no longer my concern. But Adrian, understand this. If that ledger ever surfaces publicly, I'll know you broke our agreement, and I'll come for you with everything I have. Fair warning, and understand this. If anything happens to Lena or Richard that even remotely connects to you, those files go to every federal agency in the country. We have mutual deterrence now. Let's both hope we never have to test it." Victor nodded slowly, then turned to Lena. "You should thank Adrian Voss. He just saved your life at considerable personal risk. Men like him don't do that often, or lightly." "I know exactly what he did," Lena replied evenly. "And why?" Something that might have been a smile touched Victor's lips. "Do you? I wonder." He gestured to his men. "We're leaving. Adrian, I hope we never meet again under these circumstances." "Likewise." Victor and his team withdrew in the same coordinated fashion they'd arrived, weapons still ready but no longer actively threatening. Their vehicles started up and pulled away, red taillights disappearing into the industrial darkness. Only when they were completely gone did Lena allow herself to breathe properly. "Is it over?" Richard asked from his position behind a shipping container. "Are we actually safe?" "For now," Adrian replied. "Victor honors his agreements when they serve his interests, and right now it serves his interests to leave you alone. But we'll maintain security protocols for the next 6 months, just in case." Lena walked over to Adrian, her legs suddenly weak with the aftermath of adrenaline. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For everything. The protection, the plan, risking your people to save us." "I didn't do it out of charity." Adrian's green eyes were unreadable in the harsh warehouse lighting. "You and your father represent valuable assets, information, leverage, future considerations. I made a calculated investment in your survival. I don't believe that's the only reason. Believe what you want, but understand that the world you've entered doesn't run on gratitude or sentiment. It runs on mutual benefit and strategic advantage. Adrian's voice softened almost imperceptibly. That said, you impressed me tonight. Most people would have stayed hidden and let others fight their battles. You chose to stand up. That takes courage most people don't have. Or stupidity. The line between the two is thinner than most people think. Adrian extended his hand. You're free now, Lena. Free from Victor. Free from the immediate danger. What you do with that freedom is up to you. Lena shook his hand, feeling the controlled strength in his grip. What if I don't want to go back to my old life? She asked. My apartment is gone, my job probably thinks I abandoned them, and everything that made up my normal existence has been destroyed. I can't just pretend none of this happened. No, you can't, but you can decide what comes next. Adrian released her hand and pulled out a business card. You have skills I could use. Intelligence, composure under pressure, the ability to think strategically in crisis situations. If you want to learn how to really operate in this world, call that number. I run a consulting firm that handles complex problems for people who can afford discretion. I could use someone like you. You're offering me a job? Lena looked at the card. Plain white, single phone number, no name or company listed. I'm offering you a choice. Go back to marketing, an ordinary life, always wondering if Victor might change his mind. Or step into this world fully, learn how it works, and make sure you're never a victim again. Adrian's smile was sharp. You've already proven you can handle the pressure. The question is whether you want to. Lena slipped the card into her pocket, her mind already spinning with possibilities. Her father appeared beside her, looking older and frailer than ever, but with something like hope in his eyes. What about me? Richard asked Adrian. Do I get offered a choice too? You get offered rehab and therapy, fully funded, at a facility that specializes in gambling addiction and trauma recovery. Adrian's tone was firm, but not unkind. You created this situation through your choices, Richard. Now you get to live with the consequences, which include intensive treatment and rebuilding your relationship with your daughter. No more debts, no more running, no more excuses. Either get better or get out of the way. Richard flinched but nodded. Fair enough. More than fair, considering. Adrian turned to leave, but Lena caught his arm. The architect's partner, she said. The ghost Victor once identified. You already know who it is, don't you? Adrian's expression was carefully neutral. What makes you think that? Because you're too thorough to leave loose ends, and because I've been watching how you work. You always have more information than you reveal. Lena held his gaze. Who is it? For a long moment, Adrian said nothing. Then he smiled faintly. Margaret Chen's communications were routed through multiple servers, but every system leaves traces if you know where to look. Michael found them 3 hours ago. The architect's technical partner was a cybersecurity specialist named David Chen, Margaret's younger brother, currently in witness protection after testifying against a different criminal organization. And you're not going to tell Victor? Not for 30 days. By then, David Chen will have disappeared so thoroughly that even Victor's resources won't find him. The ledger will remain a theoretical threat Victor can't eliminate, which keeps him cautious and discouraged from testing our agreement. Adrian's voice dropped. Some insurance policies work better when the other party doesn't know they're not real. That's devious. That's survival. Welcome to the world where I operate, Lena. Think carefully before you decide to join it. He walked away, his team following, leaving Lena and her father alone in the empty warehouse. Richard put a tentative hand on her shoulder. What are you going to do? Lena looked at the business card in her hand, then at her father's weary face, then at the industrial landscape around them, the detritus of other people's commerce and crimes, the hidden spaces where normal rules didn't apply. I'm going to make sure I'm never powerless again, she said quietly. And I'm going to help you get better, Dad. Because despite everything, you're still my father. But after that, she slipped the card back into her pocket. After that, I'm going to call this number and see where it leads. You're sure? This life, it's dangerous. You saw what Victor is capable of. I also saw what Adrian is capable of, and I saw what I'm capable of when I have to be. Lena started walking toward the warehouse exit. I spent my whole life trying to be safe, trying to build a normal existence, and where did it get me? One bad decision away from being sold out by my own father. Lena, I'm sorry. I know. And we'll deal with that, work through it, eventually. She looked back at him. But right now I need you to understand something. The daughter you knew, the one who worried about rent and student loans and whether her marketing campaigns were effective, that person is gone. What comes next is going to be different. Better or worse, I don't know yet, but definitely different. They emerged from the warehouse into the cold night air. In the distance, the city sparkled with lights, millions of people living their ordinary lives, completely unaware of the deadly negotiation that had just taken place in the industrial shadows. A car waited for them, one of Adrian's vehicles, with Carlos behind the wheel. Adrian arranged transportation to a hotel, Carlos said as they climbed in. Secure location, everything you need for the next few days while we finalize arrangements. The drive back to Manhattan was quiet. Richard dozed in the back seat while Lena watched the city pass by, her mind already planning her next moves. First, help her father get into treatment. Make sure he actually committed to recovery this time, that he didn't slip back into old patterns. Second, deal with the practical matters. Insurance claims on her destroyed apartment, explanations to her employer, rebuilding the mundane infrastructure of her life. And third, when the time was right, call the number on Adrian's card and step through the door into a world she was only beginning to understand. The hotel was discreet and expensive, the kind of place that didn't ask questions as long as the bill was paid. Carlos escorted them to adjoining suites and promised security would be maintained overnight. Adrian will be in touch tomorrow, he said before leaving. Get some rest. You've earned it. Lena stood in her suite after Carlos left, surrounded by luxury that felt surreal after everything they'd been through. She walked to the window and looked out at the city below, still processing the past 48 hours. 2 days ago, she'd been a marketing specialist worried about client presentations. Now she was someone who'd negotiated with international criminals, learned to handle weapons, and been offered a position in a world most people didn't even know existed. Her phone buzzed, a new message from an unknown number. You handled yourself well tonight. Most people freeze or break under that kind of pressure. You stayed sharp. That's rare. When you're ready to talk about the future, you know how to reach me. Alina saved the number and set the phone aside. She was exhausted but knew sleep would be difficult. Too much adrenaline still coursing through her system. Too many thoughts competing for attention. A soft knock on the connecting door between suites. Her father's voice, tentative. Lena, can we talk? She opened the door to find Richard standing there, looking lost and small. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he said without preamble. I know I've failed you in every way that matters. But I need you to know, I never stopped loving you. Even when I was at my worst, drinking and gambling and making terrible choices, you were the one good thing in my life, the one thing I hadn't completely destroyed. You came pretty close, Lena said, but her voice was softer than before. I did. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, if you'll let me. Richard's voice broke. Your mother would be so ashamed of what I've become, what I put you through. Mom would want you to get better, to actually do the work this time instead of just promising to change. Lena stepped forward and hugged him, feeling him shake with silent sobs. We'll get you into that treatment facility Adrian mentioned. You'll do the program completely, no cutting corners, no early departures. And when you get out, we'll figure out what our relationship looks like. But Dad, this is your last chance. I mean it. No more disasters, no more crises caused by your choices. You get better, or you lose me completely. I understand. I'll do better. I swear I will. They stood like that for a long moment, father and daughter, both broken in different ways, but maybe, possibly, finding a way to heal. Eventually, Richard went back to his room, and Lena finally allowed herself to shower and change into clean clothes. She stood under the hot water until her skin was pink and her muscles had relaxed, washing away the fear and adrenaline and accumulated stress of the past 2 days. When she finally climbed into bed, her phone was on the nightstand, Adrian's card beside it. Tomorrow, she'd make decisions about the future. Tonight, she just needed to sleep and let her mind process everything that had happened. But before sleep took her, one final thought crystallized with absolute clarity. She had been tested by fire and survived, been hunted and escaped. been offered as a sacrifice and refused the role. Whatever came next, Lena Hart would face it on her own terms, with her eyes open and her spine straight. And if that meant stepping into Adrian Voss's world, learning to operate in the shadows where power was traded like currency and information was the most valuable commodity, well, she'd proven she could handle far worse. The city lights sparkled outside her window, full of promise and danger in equal measure. Lena closed her eyes and slept dreamlessly for the first time in days, secure in the knowledge that she'd survived the worst and was ready for whatever came next. The war was over, but her real education was just beginning.